Hey folks, let me pin something here. Always takes me a second. There we go. Okay, so as we wait for people to roll in, basically for those of you who are watching in future time, I am doing a live Q&A where I'm answering a bunch of people's questions. It's scheduled, so like if you're dropping a bunch of questions in the comment section, I won't be answering those for personal boundaries. In fact, this is a timer. Something that I need to utilize more often. How do I always turn it on? I'm going to put it on for an hour and a half, and I am going to make myself stop talking after that, because if I don't make myself stop, I will lose my voice and I'll just go, and that's not good for me. And if I don't take care of myself, I can't be here to help you guys. So I've got my timer on. 65, 75, 85, 90, 5, 10, 15, 25, 30. I just did math in my head. Yay! I'm like, how many minutes is it in an hour and a half? 90. Okay, so for those of you that are watching, I do these scheduled live Q&As. If you're rewatching this on Instagram, I will drop the link to my Instagram account so you can follow me there and not miss these. This is what I call like my public Q&A. I'm going to start doing private Q&As for my subscribers on Instagram. But don't worry, if you can't afford the $5 a month, which is understandable, everything is hard right now, I still publish that, like the video, so you can still learn for free. And then these ones will always be free. So I'm going to try doing 2 of these a month. And kind of go from there. And lastly, nothing I say is medical advice. Me and you are just having a conversation. I am some random ass human on the internet. So you should, verify some of the stuff I say. Just think of it as like a stepping stone to curiosity, to research more. Right? Like, don't be like, oh, she said I can do this. I don't have to have any concerns about what medications I might be on or what my personal body is like, or use critical thinking skills. So me and you are just having a conversation. And I will say, please submit your questions through the question box. There are a lot here. Last I checked, before I hopped on about half an hour ago, I looked and there was 265 or 365. I can't remember which one it is. I will try to answer as many as I can. And once you're done watching, I save this, I publish it, I'll upload it to my Instagram wall, of course, to my YouTube if you're rewatching this. What else am I forgetting to say? I think that's about it. Okay, so now, let me pull up the question thing. You can't see this. I will just look funny as I stare at this. And I kind of go through and pick one. I will not get to everybody. If I don't answer your question, there are a lot of reasons. For one, I might have already answered something like it. If you're just hopping on, make sure to rewatch it or rewatch other live videos that I've done like this. 2, I might not feel that I'm capable of answering it, or I don't have enough information. It's too vague for the situation, right? 3, there are hundreds of questions and only one of me. So, bear with me. So I'm just going to scroll, and let's see. All right. So, I'm just I wish they made it easier to scroll through these and how I had seen it before. Let's see. How about, randomly start with this one. I have to jump in and start somewhere, right? Somebody said safe herbs to help them quit smoking weed, right? First, I'll say the hardest part of weed is mental. There's definitely going to be a little bit of withdrawal. Typically, it's not like other stuff, but you do have a withdrawal symptom. And people say that there isn't a withdrawal are full of shit and have never gone through it. I used to smoke a huge amount of weed because I used to be a very large medical grower. And it was just, it got to the point where it can be abused. It's definitely, yes, it's an herb, but it has the capacity to cause issues and use it to escape and things like that. And if you're smoking it pretty frequently, typically the withdrawal symptom is insomnia, loss of appetite, social anxiety. Your stomach can get fucked up. You either start having constipation or you start having diarrhea, depending on what it was doing to your cortisol levels, because like weed like really suppresses your cortisol function, which if you're using it in the evening before bed, cool, you help your body mellow out before stress. But if you're like from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, you're like smoking weed nonstop, you are blunting your cortisol and you're probably exhausted. So you can kind of have anxiety when you come off of it because your cortisol and your adrenals might start regulating again, and you're like, wait a minute, this feels horrible. So the best thing to do for the withdrawal symptoms are to support the areas that are coming up. Like, how can you help yourself increase your appetite? Well, I mean, there are some herbs that can do that a little bit. Like mints can help encourage like bile production, so it can bring back that hunger. But instead of doing that, I mean, you could do that, but what I would do is make small meals 6 times a day. And I don't mean like big plates necessarily, but like eat when you wake up. Eat when you wake up, 30 minutes of eating, even if you don't feel like it, because eventually you will learn to have hunger cues in the morning again, and just start eating these little bits of food throughout the day to really help your body bring that back on, because you shouldn't have to be dependent on herb to eat. And I don't know if this person was or not, but a lot of people get into that cycle. They're like, oh, I better smoke before I eat. Right? Like psychologically people do that. You know, like everyone's like waiting for some big holiday and they're going to get really stoned before they eat. Right? Like, I mean, we're not teenagers anymore, but that's a thing that a lot of people still do as adults. So it typically, you know, it gets involved with that and anything that can help you sleep. You know, like chamomile tea is a really nice, gentle one. Buy bulk loose chamomile, not the tea bags that are really old. Typically, even when you get them in the store, they're like dusty, like low grade herb, because that's what they use for the bags versus like a high grade bulk purchase of the loose flowers. She also has the benefit of helping you increase digestion, which can help with the hunger a bit. Okay. So, spend a little while on that one. That's what I mean by magpie brain. I have to be careful because I do have the capacity to just go and go and go, but I need to do that for a bunch of different questions. So, let's see what the next question I'm going to grab is. I already answered that one. Somebody asked, what do I think about apple cider vinegar hair rinse? What do I think about apple cider vinegar hair rinse? I think it's good in moderation. I think if you're using it to try to strip oil from your hair, you're just going to be in a vicious cycle. A lot of people, and you might not be doing it for this reason, but a lot of people like the idea of it because they're like, oh, I have such greasy hair and I need to get rid of it. Well, you're trapped in a cycle. Every time that you strip the grease out of your hair, your scalp, which is what's making the grease, essentially, it's not even grease, it's a healthy oil that you need, freaks out and puts out more because it's trying to save your hair. So I like apple cider vinegar if I'm working to like remineralize my hair, or if it's been like really grimy from like chemicals, like you've been using like a lot of dyes, a lot of soaps with like silicates and things in them, you know, all that really like nasty stuff that kind of gets stuck behind. Like anytime the shampoo's like, it'll make your hair feel soft for days. I'm like, because they're putting a chemical in your hair. So you can use ACV to strip that off. If you are trying to get rid of greasy hair, I would suggest working with something like almond oil. It's a really light oil, sweet almond oil, I should say. It's good for all hair types, not just straight white girl hair. Like, it's really good for really nourishing and helping to break that oil cycle. Okay, let me take a drink here. Orange juice probably wasn't a great choice because it's kind of acidic on the throat, but what are you gonna do? Okay, so let me scroll through here. I'm just gonna Russian roulette dice scroll it. Somebody asked, for tooth repair, do you recommend calcium citrate or calcium carbonate? I like calcium carbonate for topical use. Remember that we need a lot of calcium in our diet, but it needs to be bioavailable calcium, meaning like you can take all the calcium pills you want and you just shit it out. You need high quality dairy. If you can't tolerate dairy, I would look into learning how to turn eggshells into calcium powder. And if you got some money, pearl powder is pretty good. Even oyster powder, not the oyster pills necessarily, but the shell of the oyster that's powdered. That stuff becomes bioavailable. But the cheapest way, if you can't tolerate dairy, would definitely be like getting some high quality eggs, and learning how to, basically you bake them in the oven after you clean them, right? And then they're really fragile, and then you grind them down into a powder and you use that like a substitute. Okay, so I'm gonna say as a reminder, I have to use the Q&A box. You should be able to, because I'm clicking on the Q&A thing, I think you can click on that and submit things. And I say that because if I like get into here, if I get into the question section instead of that question section, I'll never answer all the people who submitted. So that's my current boundary. Okay. Oh, and one last thing about the calcium. Do know that women have a higher calcium requirements than men, and calcium is so important for the management of stress. We burn through calcium when we're stressed, and we also really need it for healthy thyroid function. Like your pituitary gland like really needs bioavailable calcium. Like that's definitely something to not mess around with. We need calcium in our life. Okay, so let me pick a question. I think you guys can even like vote in here. Like you can like a question for me to answer it. Somebody asked me like this one. Somebody voted on that twice. Somebody said, do you fuck around with the magical properties of plants? Maybe. I grew up in it differently. A lot of people look at me and they're like, oh, I get this comment all the time on like YouTube and stuff. They're like, oh, look, a real witch. And I'm like, I don't really like that term. For me, it's like steeped in like, when people got called that, they got fucking killed. It's not like a good term, right? But like, I definitely have that type of relationship with plants. I do believe that plants have their own energy. It's been proven scientifically even. Like, these are not just like empty vessels for us to like use and consume. Like, they are living beings. And on that note, I also think it's funny when people are like, I never make herbal medicine when I'm in a bad mood because I don't want to impart my energy onto you. I'm like, first of all, that's fine, or whatever. It's your choice. But you know that plant isn't empty, right? Like, this plant has energy. Like, it's like being like, I've decided not to come around you because you might become me, and then when you go and talk to the next person, you might like put my energy on that person. Not to say that we can't like affect somebody's mood. Like, we might be real bitchy and then make Karen really bitchy, and then Karen takes it out on like her employee or something, right? But I don't believe that we have the capacity to put like all of this energy into something that we're making and pass it along, which would probably break a lot of people's hearts, because I hear a lot of people be like, I can feel your energy in what you make. And I'm not saying it doesn't apply to an extent, but I'm saying like, if something you get from me like works really well for you, it's because the plant is working really well for you. I'm just a steward. I just co-created that with the plant and like gave it to you. Like, most of the credit in the regards of the capacity to help is going towards the plant. I'm just the person that put it together, right? Eventually I'm gonna have to get up and close that curtain. The sun is creeping. It's like coming up as the sun's going down. Okay, so let's see. I can't really see the screen, but I want the sun on me. So I'll see how well I can go. Let me scroll way down here. So this person said, and I wish it would show me, when I look at this, it just shows me like a blank icon of a person. Back in the day, it used to show me the picture of you so I could get, an idea. But this person, when I saw this one earlier, they asked, they get fatigued several times a week. Assuming that you might be female, it would probably be powerful to learn about your phases, like what 4 phases you are. And human females, we live in like a rhythm, like your hormonal balance in like the beginning of like the week after your period is different from the week after that, is different from the week after that, is it different from the week after that. And in some of those phases, particularly just after ovulation and during our period, we can be kind of like tired, right? Because our body's like, we have to go inward to do all this physical work, and it can really drain us. And so if you would have said I'm exhausted all the time, it probably would be something different. But you're like, a couple times a week I'm real exhausted. I think that's more like your body is trying to like work inwardly and is asking you to like slow down a little bit. So instead of maybe trying to find a way to necessarily fix that fatigue, I would go into the work of understanding, why is it there? How is it serving me? Do I need to nourish my body more? Do I need to rest more? Like, we have this capacity in society, especially women, to where we're like, I shouldn't rest at all. I shouldn't figure out like what my body's trying to say. I should figure out how to like beat this into submission and feel fucking capable all the time. Believe me, I've been there. It's not judgment. Like, it's like, yeah, that shit'll break you. So, you know, look into what cycle you're in. And, you know, most, if you have like a menstrual app, a good one, even a good free one, you can dig in and it'll show you what phase of your cycle you're in. And that can be really, really helpful. Somebody says, my wallpaper and little cabinet are so pretty. Thank you. This is a $10 tapestry off of Amazon. I'm in the middle of turning this little office room that was with the house 2 years ago when I bought it into my office. Finally, it's always just kind of been storage. And it came with like the standard like 1980s fake wood paneling. But I'm tired and I don't want to paint. And I'm like, what can I do? What can I do not to paint? And I'm like, I can buy a tapestry off of Amazon. You know, and I was like, I got one that kind of looked like it didn't have any specific pattern. So it just kind of looked like it went there. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we can do here, answering questions. So this person asked, I'm looking at votes here. When did you start your journey into herbalism, and any books you'd recommend for quality knowledge? Okay, so full disclaimer, I was born into it. Both sides of my family. I had a couple grandmas, as people tend to have, whether they know them or not, they existed. And I learned it culturally on both sides. But to also be transparent, I fucking left home when I was 13, and I was in a lot of trouble before then, like wanting, you know, not really wanting to do any of it. Like, I was there around it. I helped my grandma Ruby quite a lot. But also, fuck you, I don't want to do anything you tell me. When I really tuned into it was 2 times in my life. When I hit the streets homeless between the ages 13 and about 19-ish. Basically, once I had my son, I kind of wasn't necessarily not homeless, but was attempting not to be, right? I really learned what my family had taught me then, and learned a lot of my own, and started remembering things and using plants to heal my body and not starve and work through fucking trauma. And I actually wrote a book on it if you want to learn about herbalism, plus like my childhood, like when I was homeless. I don't fucking sell it well. Although people really love it. The link in my bio on Instagram will take you to it. But also, the second time was, I moved back up to the very top of the mountain where I'm from, and I was living in a little shack. When I say a shack, I mean a fucking shack. Like, I was like shitting in a bucket. We had no running water. We had no electricity. It was like poverty that a lot of people, I hope, never experience, you know. And I just kind of like decided that I was going to come off of benzos after a decade of using them for PTSD. And that was fucking like, I had to like die to myself a ton. And I really ended up, I don't know, I feel like I made a deal with the land. Like, if I tell people about you, if I help people remember that not only do you exist, but they're smart enough to recall this, and if I give out all this information that I've accumulated over the years, and I show the fuck up and do the work, like, could I please not die? And it was really odd, and it would probably freak some people out to hear that, but like, right after that, like, not that it was easy, it was a hard climb out, but like, that was the first time in my life that things started going right. Honestly, like, I would tell people about things that had gone wrong for me in like a 2-week period, and they would be like, what the fuck? And I'm like, yeah, that's my life. Like, it was just constant chaos no matter what I did. And when I showed back up to the land, and just started being present and started like working with her, she definitely saved my life. And that's when I really stepped into it. In fact, that's when I started my Instagram account. I think it's 8 or 9 years ago now. 9? Maybe 10 years. I think it's been about a decade since I first showed up and just started like raging. You can scroll back through my Instagram account to like see a lot of that raging and watch me like talk about coming off of benzos and shit like that. So that's that one. Okay. I do not have an electronic copy of the book yet. I need to get on it, honestly. Okay. Oh, they also asked about books I'd recommend for quality knowledge. You can buy my book if you want to. But also, I have a video called Herbal Book Recommendations, where I go into depth about like the types of books that you want to look for versus any one specific book. And it's typically more to do with what's in your region. It's always better to learn about the plants around you and then seek out the information about them versus typically if you buy somebody's herbalism book, including my own, you start to eagle eye in on the herbs that you're learning about, and you might end up like ordering them, calling them in, growing them, and that's fine or whatever. But you also could just step outside and learn the resources you have around you first, and then like as you're like, wow, I've like learned all these plants, I wonder what else plants are in the world, you could like expand yourself out and do that. Okay, so didn't want to miss the other half of that. So somebody asked, what herbs help with inability to focus? Whenever I try to do schoolwork, it takes me like, that's one of two, but I'm guessing it takes them a while. There are a lot of things that can disrupt our focus, and there are a lot of things that will end up being labeled ADD or ADHD. A big part of that is definitely like nutritional and mineral deficiencies. I work a lot with herbs. I talk a lot about herbs, but I also know a lot about the human body beyond herbs. And there are some things that herbs can't do entirely. And one of those things is that they cannot remineralize your body. They cannot make sure that you necessarily have all the vitamin B's you need, that you have all, like the magnesium and the potassium and the salt balance. There's this really cool protocol called the root cause protocol. It is primarily focusing on like building back up nutrition stores. Anybody who is under a lot of stress, whether it's from schoolwork, right? I don't care if it's high school all the way into college, middle school, depending on how much of a perfectionist you might be. It's stressful, right? And your brain's like, I need this, but it also needs something called carbohydrates. Are you eating enough, right? Are you eating enough? The adult human body needs more than 2,500 calories a day just to be like in stasis mode, not moving. You need that. That's what you burn in a day. Like if you're not eating enough, it's hard to concentrate. If you look into all that stuff and you're like, I've got all that stuff covered, an herb that you could add in would be something like lion's mane mushroom. It's really great nootropic. It really helps the neurons in your brain function. But also consider rosemary, like something you make chicken with. A rosemary tincture or rosemary tea. She's fantastic for stimulating blood flow to your brain. Sometimes lack of memory or ability to focus and things like that can be because our spine isn't aligned right, and when it gets all fucked up here, the main veins here are having a hard time getting blood to your brain. That can be the cause of headaches and things like that too. Okay, so next question. That is a hard one. Okay, let me jump into here. So this person asked, safe herb to balance dopamine and serotonin levels during pharmaceutical withdrawals. They're on a Gabin, which is a benzo basically, and tramadol, which is not a benzo, and they're hitting a roadblock of suicidal withdrawal symptoms. So first, let me say I deeply understand. When I came off of benzos, like the invasive thoughts were one of the hardest things that I dealt with, like mentally. And I'm a visual spatial person, meaning when I think I actually see pictures, and so when you suddenly get like a visual spatial picture of doing something horrible that you don't want to think about, it becomes consuming. One of the ways that I did help myself with that was being out on the land, and the land doesn't have to be some faraway mountain. It can be a park. It can be a walkway. It can be anything that like helps stimulate your nervous system around that. Having patience. Now, in regards to balancing dopamine and serotonin, please know that serotonin is a stress hormone. Do we need it? Yes. Do we need it in the way that we're told that it makes us feel happy? Fuck no. It is actually pretty damaging. And science is finally starting to accept it, where they're like, oh, it turns out that serotonin might not be so great. But don't worry, the drugs we give you that increase serotonin might make you feel better anyways. It's a whole shit show. But I would focus on supporting dopamine and actually lowering serotonin, which you can do by things like eating a raw carrot salad on a regular basis, having oat bran in the morning. These things bind to serotonin. You could try willow bark if you didn't want to use aspirin. You can get USP grade aspirin that doesn't have anything synthetic in it. In regards of like, if you get like Bayer aspirin, it's junk, right? Because it's got all these fillers in it, but it's pretty good at helping to regulate serotonin. Dopamine, that one, you can, I mean, it's not really something that you can necessarily take an herb to increase dopamine, because it's the reward center of your brain. What you can do though is help your brain rewire how it gets hits of dopamine. And one of that way is to take away all these cheap and dirty dopamine hits we get. The notifications on your phone, the bright lights on an app, random sex with strangers. I know that I'm not saying you do that, but like it's a thing that a lot of people do. Like, and we get these dopamine hits that don't actually lead to any increased amount of joy. And then eventually our brain gets like more and more desperate, because it's like we need dopamine to function and to feel better. And if we keep cheapening that, like, get your dopamine hits from like a nice walk, a satisfying meal, being around like friends and loved ones in person, learning how to work with your hands and create beauty, you know what I mean? Things like that can really, really be helpful. But also, if it comes down to it, and I'm not an expert with this, I didn't actually have it available to me when I was coming off of benzos, but I have read and seen a lot of people give good accounts of it. People have stepped into working with Amanita muscaria, which is a hallucinogenic mushroom that is legal in every state in the United States minus Tennessee. In Tennessee, you're only allowed to have her for ornamental purposes, but who the fuck is going to know if you ingest her? Right. I would look up Amanita Dreamer. She has a lot of information on that. People have used that successfully to help mitigate coming off of these types of medications. But really what she does is she's getting in there and rewiring your GABA receptors, which is why you feel bad. Basically, and I know I'm going on about this one, but it's very personal to me. When we take things like benzos, and SSRI and SSRDs and things like that, they jack up your serotonin, right? And at first you feel great because stress hormones feel that way, and then you feel numb because that's the point, right? Benzos jack up your GABA. And it's a type of acid in your brain that makes you feel safe, right? That's why you're like, oh, I'm having an anxiety attack. I can take this fucking benzo, this Xanax, this whatever I've got, and then I'll feel better, right? But what happens is it basically like, here's your GABA receptor, here's what makes the acid, and usually that opens and a little bit goes out and touches your GABA receptor, and you feel better. That's how it would naturally happen. When you take a benzo or anything like that, it makes the fucking door stay open. It like sticks a boot in there, and this acid is flooding your brain constantly. Your GABA receptor gets overreactive. But when you stop taking it, the door shuts. And then you start going through all these horrendous withdrawal symptoms because your GABA receptors are only getting little bits of real GABA. And that feels like fucking death, believe me. I was on benzos, a high dose, for a decade, and it took me 2.5 years to slowly come off of it. So anyhow, also look into liquid titration. Make sure that you're not coming off too fast. You need to go really slow and really low. And that won't make all the withdrawal symptoms go away, but it can make it less abrupt. So that's a thing that will probably get this video marked down. Okay, next question. So this question is, thoughts on hormone replacement therapy or only using herbs, and what truly works for menopause? Okay, the first thing to do for anybody who's dealing with hormone issues is to completely rip out of your head what mainstream medicine tells you about hormonal function. They're going to tell you that if you're a woman going through menopause, you need all this estrogen, right? That if you're a woman at all, you need all this estrogen. But we're fucking drowning in estrogen because there are phytoestrogens in all the goddamn soy and all the food we eat, right? It's in everything. And you become estrogen dominant, right? Most menopausal symptoms, even if you have low estrogen, you're still estrogen dominant. Did you know, and this is about men, but it's still crazy, that the average 20-year-old today has the testosterone level of a 60-year-old 20 years ago, right? Their testosterone levels are so low because they're estrogen dominant. And so really when people start having like hot flashes and stuff like that, it's more of a symptom of your estrogen dominant and progesterone deficient. If you are having, and I guarantee this question is in there, if you are having, you know, like ovarian syndrome, or if you have fibroids, or if you have like, you know, horrible painful periods, if you have PMDD, if you have fucking hormonal acne, it's estrogen dominance. Think about it. When and this isn't necessarily about the menopause, but like when you get like really, really emotional, like if you're erratic, if you're angry, if you're freaking out a week or two before you're bleeding, what's happening is your estrogen is rising, but you already had enough estrogen in your body to begin with. And by the way, you can't necessarily trust a blood test because estrogen stores in fat. So while you might look like you're fine in estrogen on a blood test, every time you're burning fat, it's releasing estrogen into your body, right? And so you really got to learn about the actual function of hormones and also how amazingly protective progesterone is. Now we can do things like use wild yam root. Wild yam root doesn't actually have progesterone in it. It has DHEA, which is a precursor. It's like a master hormone. Imagine this lip balm is DHEA, right? And imagine these random tools. Imagine the scissors are estrogen, the fucking screwdriver is like testosterone, and this pin is progesterone. When you take DHEA, whether it's from like wild yam cream or if you take a DHEA supplement, it says, what do I need to be? It turns into, oh, it stabbed me. It turns into all three, right? But sometimes, however, if you've got too much fucking estrogen in your body, the estrogen goes, psych! And won't let the DHEA turn into anything but estrogen. So getting estrogen dominance under control is really helpful. Part of doing that is like removing like polyunsaturated fatty acids from your diet, PUFAs, which is like canola, soy, grapeseed, sunflower. Basically, if this is a man-made oil, like if you can't go out there and fucking somehow grab this fat on your own, like I can like kill a cow and get the tallow, or I can make butter, or I can get a coconut or whatever. If you can't make this fat on your own, it's a PUFA. So consider getting those out of your diet, and learning about progesterone and estrogen dominance. And I know that was a lot. I know that was a lot. I will say, getting a hormone test is a good place to start, even if the estrogen one isn't necessarily reliable. I will say, if you start using progesterone, I like a product called Progest E. It's by Dr. Ray Peat. He's super into hormones and can teach you all about that kind of stuff and metabolism. You do have to cycle with it though. You don't want to just be like, fucking progesterone like constantly, right? You want to like make sure that you're working in the natural rhythms of your body, which is a little easier if you're a guy, a little harder if you're a woman, but it's like a week or so on, a week or so off, like that. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Okay. Oh, I will also say, because magpie brain, in the middle of a hot flash, you don't give a fuck about any of that. There are some herbs that can help calm that down. I wouldn't use them excessively. But like a motherwort tincture, a skullcap tincture, or even milky oats can kind of help in the moment. But with the motherwort and the skullcap, if you use them constantly 24/7, you can like repress your thyroid function, which will fuck your hormones up even more. So be like as needed with them, right? Okay. So, question time. Let's see. Let me roll through here. talked about hormones a lot there. This one is, what's your take on the whole avocado oil is already rancid when you buy it rumor? Well, it's not a PUFA oil, so it doesn't have a tendency to go rancid, and I would say it depends on the quality. I exclusively use Chosen Blend, and they don't, I wish they'd give me, like, money to say that, or, like, some money off of their oil. I use Chosen Foods avocado oil, and I buy it, like, in 100-gallon plus increment. It gets showed up on a semi because you guys buy a lot of my offerings, and it comes in 4.5-gallon jugs, but you can buy it in just a bottle at the store. And that means I get things called COAs, Certificates of Analysis. And I know that my oil isn't rancid. I know that there's no microbes in it. I know that there's no heavy metals. I know that it's pure avocado oil. I like avocado oil. Avocado oil and olive oil are the only two that I will use that's not like an animal fat, because they're not a PUFA. Now, olive oil, there's some debate about, there's a word I know. If you heat it too long, or too hot, I should say, it can destabilize and turn into a PUFA. But people debate that. I typically am using it for like salad dressings, or like if I'm just like cooking an egg real quick. I don't have that heat really high anyways. I will say that with olive oil, I like to avoid anything that came from Italy. Most olive oil coming out of Italy is cut and contaminated with other PUFA oils, and it's not pure avocado. I mean, it's not pure olive oil. So I like to look for stuff that's coming from Greece, or other countries that are growing olives besides Italy. Okay, so, all right. Next question. How about, okay, so this one says, suggestions for deep exhaustion, feels emotional and physical, and I feel like I need more support. Okay, so first of all, our emotions are directly tied to the mineral status of our body, to the blood sugar status of our body. Like, your emotions are real, but also they are highly influenced by the physical state of your body. There's no way getting around that. So here's the deal. If we are undernourished, if we are undermineralized, if we are overworked, if we are undersleeping, if we are constantly looking at blue screens, if we are not getting any sun exposure, if we are completely disconnected from standing on the ground barefoot, we're going to feel like shit, and we're going to get tired. Most people, when they have extreme exhaustion, they're probably copper deficient, and then they'll go to the doctor and they'll be like, you're anemic. But almost nobody's iron deficient because they put fucking iron shavings in all the food you eat. But what's happening is you don't have any copper in your body, and you need copper as basically like a conductor to shuttle the iron into your cells, which gets into your mitochondria, which makes ATP function happen. Meaning, you can't create energy if you don't have these minerals. Most people, almost everybody in America is magnesium deficient as well. We're boron deficient. We're everything. And I'm not advocating for this because I'm paid to, but I really like the root cause protocol. You can get a download of it for free. You can buy the book. You can read people talking about it. It's really just basically a way to help you start remineralizing your body. Right? And if you start focusing on that, I would also consider looking into pro-metabolic eating. A lot of people are like, I'm exhausted all the time, but they don't realize that, like, they're maybe only eating 1,200 calories, and they're terrified of sugar, even though every cell in your body needs glucose to function. And if you don't eat carbohydrates, it starts eating it from your muscles and from your organs, and you get exhausted. And then you'll hear people be like, well, I quit sugar and I feel fucking great, you dumb bitch. I've had people tell me that all the time, and I'm like, yeah, because stress hormones are fun. You start living off of cortisol and adrenaline. Your stress hormones go up, and you start digesting your muscles, and you're like, I feel amazing because I've cut sugar out of my diet. I'm like, yeah, well, that won't last. Eventually, you can only run on cortisol for so long. Put it this way. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I weighed 96 pounds. People were like, wow, that's amazing. No, it's not. No, it's not. I wasn't naturally skinny. I wasn't naturally that way. I was fucking undereating. I didn't do it on purpose. I was just like kind of maybe ate a little bit of breakfast, ate some snacks during lunch, and then maybe a dinner, but like got back to work and worked 14-hour days and felt fucking horrible. And I'm like, I use all these herbs, and I eat clean, and I do all this stuff, and I avoid refined sugar. What the hell is wrong with me? Well, I was fucking starving. you know. I weigh 133 pounds right now. I have amazing orgasms, my periods don't hurt, and I sleep through the night. And a lot of it is I eat a lot of carbohydrates. And oh, by the way, I gained 2 cup sizes. Jesus Christ. Now, not everybody will do that. Not everybody will do that, right? But I'm just saying that, like, we live in a constant state of malnutrition on top of undereating, right? And you can also be eating enough and be undernourished because maybe you're eating junk, or because there's no minerals left in the fucking soil in this country because we don't take care of anything, right? And so it's like learning about pro-metabolic eating, and it's not a diet. People are like, oh, it's a diet, this diet fad. I'm like, it's not a diet. It literally just retrains you how to eat. And you need a carbohydrate, a protein, and a fat at the same goddamn time. And that's really not that hard, you know. Like, I might have, like, in the morning for breakfast, I might have, like, a fried egg, a couple pieces of bacon, and some cantaloupe. That's a carbohydrate, fat, protein, right? And then I'm not hungry for a few hours, you know. And then, but I don't let myself, even if it's been a couple hours or 3 hours since breakfast, even if I'm not overly hungry, I'm like, okay, time to eat a little snack. Build up those glucose stores in your liver so you have energy. And so, anyhow, I went up 2 cup sizes, and I had people being like, so when did you get your boob job done? I'm like, I didn't. I just started eating food. I went from a C to a double D, and I was like, holy shit, what's happening here? And I'm like, oh, wow. Just turns out that, like, my body never had the nutrition. Because, just so you know, women, your breasts are like the last place that you lose weight from, and the last place that your body puts weight on once it feels safe. Like, it's an excess reserve, right? It's like a safety thing. I've got the sunlight just right here. It's slowly creeping, isn't it? Maybe if I... No, that doesn't affect anything, April. That's just you being right there. Okay. So, it's never, like, a small answer when people are like, I'm tired. I'm like, blah. Here's all this information. Okay, so... Okay, alright, let me take a drink of orange juice, which... This, I found it... I usually press my own because it's cheaper, but we were... everything here is like an hour and a half away. We were in a town a little over the mountain, and I was like, holy shit, they have fucking fresh pressed orange juice, which is loaded with copper, by the way. The pasteurized orange juice at the store is okay, but it loses a lot of its copper content when they pasteurize it. Okay, so herbs and remedies to support a sinus infection. It's super painful. I used to get sinus infections a lot when I was a kid, to the point that I thought it was like just a thing that happened, you know. And my mom, bless her heart, never really did anything for it. And I'd be like, I have distinct memories of, you know, it's really plugged up for a while, and then like you're walking home from school, and like suddenly the dam looses and you don't have tissues. And I'm like looking around, and I'm like using my coat because I'm like, there's so much coming out and it won't stop, you know. Goddamn. So I'm pretty familiar with sinus infections. I really like yarrow for that. I also like mullein infusion. If you have cedar trees around you at all, juniper would work in a pinch. I like to do, like, steam it, right? Like, boil it real good. Don't drink it. It'll fuck your liver up. But breathe it in. Breathe it in pretty deeply, as much as you can, even if you can't get it into your nose because it's so thick, right? I also like to breathe it into your lungs because all that's connected, right? And so... Another thing to consider would be working with some sort of antihistamine, like Pearly Everlasting. But I'll tell you right now, if it's bad and you don't have any of these herbs on hand, using something, and people fucking freak out when they're like, you're an herbalist, why are you using drugs? I'm like, because they're both really important tools. Sometimes what you can do is use like Claritin to open up the passageway enough that you can then breathe in that steam. But also, anything that we can do, like nettle would be a good one too for reducing histamine. When we're sick, our body creates histamines, and as a reaction to the bacteria or the virus that we have, and then we get symptoms like a stuffed up nose. Like, the infection isn't really what's causing the stuffed up nose or the snot constantly. what it's causing is your body's response that creates the snot, right? And so sometimes we have to just kind of clear that fucking passageway and calm down the histamines so we can actually begin fighting it with things like yarrow or mullein or breathing in steam. Okay, so, all right, let's see. Next question. Oh shit, my timer turned off. That's hilarious. I don't think it went off. I don't think it's been 90 minutes. So, what works best for bladder infections? It burns when I pee. It's hard to hold it. Thank you. So if you're just dealing with a one-off bladder infection, a lot of water, some yarrow tincture, if you can go to the store and find that stuff called just cranberry, not the shit from concentrate. That's better than nothing if all you can find it, but find something that's so fucking sour you're like taking shots of it. It has a natural substance in it called D-manganese, and that can actually, what it does is it goes in there and it binds to the bacteria and you piss it out. So make sure you're moving a lot of water through. Goldenrod or cleavers would be pretty good because both of those are natural diuretics with antibacterial properties. So they're going to help you piss out that bacteria. If it's really bad, if you've been fighting it for a while, if you have a fever, consider going and getting a D-manganese supplement. You can get it like as a supplement that helps a lot of people. But if you develop a fever, it might have reached your kidneys, and you might just need some good old amoxicillin. Now, I'm not pro-antibiotic unless you need it, but amoxicillin is kind of like candy. It's not so strong that it's going to kill all the bacteria in your gut. I shouldn't say it's like fucking candy, but I just mean it's kind of benign and it's been around for a long time. I always have some on hand for like those times when like I either can't get something under control with herbs or something hits so fast that you don't have time for herbs to work, if that makes sense. Corn silk is not bad for bladder infections. It helps with the pain, but corn silk tends to have more of an affinity towards the kidneys, I notice. If you have cystic, like if it just burns all the time when you pee, which happens to some people, corn silk is amazing for that too. But I mean, it's such a gentle one, you could use it alongside of it, it wouldn't hurt anything, and if you make corn silk tea, it literally just tastes like corn. It just tastes, and you put some honey in it, it's pretty good, it just tastes like sweet corn. Okay, so, alright. Let's see the next question. So, what do you recommend for panic attacks and general anxiety that gets worse at night? So, let's talk about the difference between a panic attack and an anxiety attack so people know the difference, and maybe you might learn something about it too if you haven't already. So, a panic attack is when you lose all reasonable critical thinking and the sun is just like, hi! You lose all... I have an idea, hold on. Aha, I raised the chair up a little bit. You lose all of your ability to believe that you're not dying. Like, you think that either you're having a heart attack or the world is ending and you think you need to go to the hospital and you're like really, really fucking freaking out. That's a panic attack. An anxiety attack is when like you're really anxious, you want to run, you feel sick, you might be shitting yourself. That can happen with a panic attack too. But they are two different beasts. None of them are pleasant. I like catnip tincture for panic. As our anxiety as well, directly under the tongue. It's gonna fucking burn under your tongue because it's alcohol, right? But it absorbs sublingually the skin under your tongue. There's no avoiding the sun. Maybe, well, I guess I could do the power of scooting over. What a novel idea, April. Scoot over. I like it, for panic attacks, and when you put it under your tongue sublingually, it hits your bloodstream like that. That's why when people are having like strokes and stuff, they might put the it's not glycerin, it's glycerite, it's something fucking toxic, right under your tongue, and it helps you immediately because it's getting into your bloodstream like fast. So you could take a catnip tincture like every 5 minutes until you're able to step back and notice. But if you are having a lot of panic, especially towards the evening, do you also not sleep well? Right? Are you also like waking up around 3 in the morning? Are you also waking up and like not being able to sleep? Or are you... It sounds like your cortisol is probably through the roof. It sounds like you don't have, maybe if it's getting worse at night, you are likely really, really low in glucose reserves. So again, no emotional state in our body is unrelated to the physical state of our body, right? And if you aren't eating enough, people are gonna be like, she's a fucking broken record. If you aren't getting enough glucose, carbohydrates in your diet, if you aren't eating enough healthy animal fats, if your liver is unable to store glucose well, like, you can start feeling really nervous. And it would make sense towards the evening because you've already been going all day long and your body's like, I don't have anything left. I don't have anything left to give to you. And I don't come from a place of just guesstimation. I want you to know that. So somebody asked how many drops into the tongue every 5 minutes. Do a fucking full dropper full. Like, you're not, like, having to worry about math. Just put what you can under there. Honestly, I tell people, you know, if you're just starting with an herb, start with 1 or 2 drops to see how it makes you feel. Work your way up. I put, you know, common dosage on a bottle. But, like, most of the time for stuff like that, I'm like, I'll, like, grab a tincture, you know. Like here's a milky oat tincture. And I'll just be like, cool, that's how much I can grab. If you're having a panic attack especially, it doesn't fucking matter. Because you want a big dose to hit you fast. You're not ever going to take enough of a catnip tincture to really hurt yourself. Worst case scenario, you're going to fall asleep. You know, especially if you used it before and you know that you don't have, like, an allergic reaction to it or something like that. Okay. So somebody said I shouldn't be answering these because it's not in the question box, but somebody said, I pick my corn when the stalk turns black. What color should it be to make the tea? It's more the corn silk. You don't want the corn stalk. You want, you know, when you peel the ear back and you have, like, the string that gets all over and people think you've got hair in your food, but it's actually corn silk. That's what you're saving. And you want to use it dried for tea or fresh for tincture. Okay, so I already talked about catnip, needing to make sure that you're eating enough. See, you could start doing, another thing for anxiety in general would be, like, working on the tone of your vagus nerve. I don't mean the nerve that takes you to Vegas and makes you regret a bunch of things. I mean, some people call it the vagal nerve as well. Basically, you have a nerve that starts in your brain and it runs to every organ and every inch of your body, really. And it regulates your parasympathetic nervous system. It is what causes an anxiety attack. It is what makes you feel calm. It is your master nerve, basically. It actually, the vagus nerve, it actually means, like, the wandering nerve in, like, Latin or some fancy shit like that. And if you start working on repairing your vagal nerve tone, you can also reduce anxiety. And I was saying, I'm coming from this as a person that I was on benzos for a decade for severe PTSD and agoraphobia. Like, I couldn't, like, leave my house. And now I'm like, hey, how you doing? Going all over, drove 4 hours to a show. I haven't had an anxiety attack, like a real anxiety attack or a panic attack, in probably over 6 or 7 years. It's fucking crazy. If you would have told me that, you know, all that time ago, I wouldn't have believed you. Like, my life was anxiety. I didn't know anything else. But, like, I'm telling you, there is a way out. It's not necessarily easy. It's not instant. But you can work your way through it and find yourself on the other side of it. It's fucking crazy. Okay, so let's see. Answered that one. Somebody asked if we are safe from the fire. We are. I should say they haven't updated the NCI, like, fire website lately, so that tells me that the fire's out and there's no more helicopters with fire buckets going. However, today we've been having, like, crazy high winds, which is, like, fire season. In fact, I don't know, some people might have heard about it on the news because my hometown is Pendleton, Oregon. The Pendleton flour mills somehow burnt down. Anyhow, it caught on fire again today, and I'm like, oh wow, fire's been out for a week and a half and it just happened to catch on fire again. But anyhow, so the wind is making that go like crazy. I'm far away from that though. I live like an hour away from my hometown. So this person says, advice on removing rosehip hairs and mullein hairs. The idea of it in my throat intimidates me. Yep. Get yourself a nut milk bag. That's what they call them. You can get a nylon one or a muslin one, anything that's really thin and cotton, and just strain it really well. Definitely don't drink mullein tincture without straining it. Rose hips are the same way. They'll definitely give some irritation. I personally like, and I know people don't like the concept of plastic sometimes, but I really like the nylon bags. I feel like they last longer. I'm not letting it sit in anything. They have a tighter mesh, and I like that I can just pop them in my dishwasher. I have found that the cotton bags and stuff like that, they just don't come clean. Like, I can use my nylon bag to like strain a thing of oil, and then I can wash it real good, and then I can use it for a tincture or a water-based something if I want. But if I were to use a cotton bag, you almost just can't get the oil out of it. You know what I mean? And you'll feel like there's no oil in it until you run alcohol through it and it strips oil out of it. And those nut milk bags are cheap. You can get like 3 or 4 of them for like $8 or $9. It used to be cheaper than that, but comparative to everything else in the world right now, that's relatively cheap for being able to reuse them over and over again. Yeah, you can use a coffee filter if you want to. Okay, so let's see. I talked about that a little bit already. That one is kind of hard. This person, so I do it. I know a lot of herbs that can help with the mind, but what's best for disassociation? So for those of you who don't know, there's disassociation and deassociation. Disassociation is where everything looks weird. Like if you've ever done mushrooms, like just right after you've come down or just right when they hit, everything looks just a little fucking weird. Like, deassociation is more severe, where like you look in the mirror or you don't feel like you're yourself. You could have panic about that. Most of that stuff comes from severe vitamin B anemia. It's just a factor. You could maybe use herbs to treat that, but and I know I'm talking a lot about minerals and stuff more than I am about herbs, but it's kind of potato, right? Like, you can use herbs for your mental health, but there's not a whole lot of herbs that are going to give you the vitamin B that you need. I would look into particularly like using something like bee pollen or brewer's yeast that's unfortified. I like brewer's yeast, not nutritional yeast. They're 2 different things, and typically what I do is I put a couple tablespoons of the brewer's yeast powder into like a pint jar, and I pour boiling water over that, and I let it sit until the sediment settles on the bottom, and then I pour off the top stuff, and I drink that, and I discard the sediment. The sediment, it can be kind of estrogenic, but the water itself, you're basically making an infusion of brewer's yeast, and it is loaded with all kinds of B vitamins, in particular vitamin B1, which is thiamine. Most people are deficient in thiamine. It's got a lot of niacinamides and niacin in it too. It shouldn't make your skin burn. Don't worry, it's not like trying to pass a drug test with niacin. But a lot of people, a lot of mental health stuff like that, including there's even some studies about people with schizophrenia. Not everybody, but a lot of people, they started using therapies of like high dose, like thiamine and niacin and vitamin Bs, and like resolving issues. So if I was having a lot of disassociation or even deassociation, I would like start trying to work on my vitamin B. Now, I like using brewer's yeast instead of a supplement because it's naturally occurring, right? When we start taking individual supplements of vitamin B, it typically needs a cofactor of another vitamin B, and you might fuck yourself up. It might deplete one while it's restoring another one. But if you use something like brewer's yeast, it's all naturally in balance, right? Because nature made it, man didn't. So that's the thing that helps. You can buy brewer's yeast on Amazon. You can buy it just about anywhere. Just make sure that it's not fortified, and it's not the same as nutritional yeast. That shit is garbage. It's bad for you. Most of that stuff, nutritional yeast, is fortified and it's grown from bacteria. Brewer's yeast is literally what's left over at the bottom of a vat when they're done making beer. And that sounds like, ugh, but it's like a natural yeast that occurred, and then as it died back, it settled to the bottom, and it's just loaded with vitamins. It won't get you drunk, or doesn't taste like alcohol. It kind of tastes like a tangy chicken broth, honestly. Sometimes I add a scoop or so to the soup I'm making because you can't really taste it, you know. Okay, so let's see a next question. Let me roll way down here. Okay, so this is kind of a similar question. Hi, April. Could you talk about herbal alternatives to mood stabilize for bipolar disorder? First of all, I know it's a loaded question, too, because I don't want anybody to hear me say you don't have to take your medication. Right, that's not what I'm meaning. It just, think of it like as a research point. And actually, everything I just talked about. Work on like deeply remineralizing your body. And consider some nervine herbs like milky oat. Look into the correlation, and this will piss a bunch of people off, but look into the correlation of sky-high serotonin and mental health. Now you're like, people are like, oh, I need the serotonin, it makes me feel better, but it actually can lead to a lot of issues, which is why, by the way, when people take, you know how they tell you, if you take an SSRI or something like that, they're like, you might feel suicidal because it gives you just enough energy to think about it. No, you feel fucking suicidal because serotonin is a stress hormone, and when it rises, you just get that push over the edge for some people. You know, now you don't want your serotonin to be too low. That feels like shit too, but most people are really high in serotonin. So you can look into ways to start naturally balancing your serotonin so it's not so dominant with your dopamine, but also maybe do some digging into the correlation between, like, usually it's niacin or niamaside. It can be the thiamine as well. Look into the correlation between severe thiamine and vitamin B deficiency. If you have the MTHFR mutation, it's even more likely, and bipolar. And even if anybody has other mental health issues, even schizophrenia and things like that, it's pretty interesting stuff to read about. But then you could use, like, some nervines, like milky oats, lion's mane. Those two come to mind because they're both pretty nootropic and helping your nervous system function correctly, and like your neurons in your brain fire correctly. But, you know, do the research, weigh the pros and cons, and if you decide to do that, start slow. Don't go cold turkey and then just jump head in. Just like slowly give yourself time to research and step into something. Okay, so I would love to know the resources you use to learn all this. The internet. I'm just curious. A lot of the hormone stuff that I'm talking about, and a lot of the vitamin B and all this stuff, I've been doing a lot of research over the past year of the work of Dr. Raymond Peat, and a lot of people that follow him. But I use PubMed, ScienceMed. Like, I read in-depth studies. I live with a neurodiversity, and part of that is like my brain requires more dopamine than average, and I get dopamine hits from learning. My mind is a fucking monster. There's me, and then there's my brain. It is a different creature. I also I do quantitative thinking, so like I think of my brain like a spider web. If you touch something over here, it goes ding, 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 ding all over, right? It's the different things that pop up, and that's how I'm like all over the place. And it can be exhausting, and I have to put limits on myself of how long I'm allowed to research. But generally, it's just curiosity. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. Anybody can be curious and start learning and start looking for more and start reading studies and going down rabbit holes and just reading and reading and reading. And eventually you start to retain all of this. Okay, so where is the box? I don't know because I'm on this end, but people say if you hit the plus button, I think that's where it is hiding at. Okay, so let me scroll way down here. Let me scroll way down here because people were submitting questions for hours. Support for constipation that lasts for weeks at a time. Happens a few times a year. I'm going to be a broken record. Give me a second. Cascara is a good thing. It's an herb. I would suggest the brand from Mountain Rose Herbs because they age it properly. It's basically going to help you go to the bathroom on a regular basis, but and I say I'm going to sound like a broken record because constipation is typically caused by serotonin. And people are like, fuck, this bitch won't stop talking about serotonin. But serotonin is created in your gut, in case you didn't know that. And so it can really really cause a lot of damage. It can cause diarrhea. It can cause constipation. I would look into cascara. I always fucking say it wrong, and I probably can't spell it right. But it can help you go to the bathroom on a regular basis. It needs to be aged right. It needs to be aged, or it will actually not be pleasant to use. And from what I've seen people talk about, and with my husband, the Mountain Rose herb blends, their cascara seems to be aged correctly where they're sourcing it from. I would not do coffee enemas. I would not do an enema at all. You are not like an oil filter that needs to be changed. You're just going to damage your gut health doing that. You can drink coffee if you want. It can stimulate people to go to the bathroom, but it's not really going to solve the issue beyond using something like cascaria to go to the bathroom. You can also start adding in the raw carrot salad that I talked about earlier. It's going to bind to a bunch of endotoxins. If you don't like carrots, you can use well-cooked button mushrooms, like the white mushrooms from the store. Cook them really well, though. That can bind to that too, as well as bamboo shoots, but those aren't super accessible to me. But also, I've been having decent luck using oat bran in the morning as a hot cereal. It's really just going to bind to those toxins and the endotoxin loads that are causing it. Now, I'd start paying attention. Does that constipation happen when you're really stressed out? Does it correlate to it? In between that, are you having diarrhea? Right? It kind of works that way. And so here's a crazy thing. Also, you could start eating a teaspoon of butter a day. It has butyric acid in it, and I always say that wrong, but it's basically the specific acid that if you were eating a lot of like resistant, like inulin, like starch, like non-digestive, like it gets into there and it feeds the good bacteria. That stuff has a tendency, and it's in butter. It's in butter naturally, so you don't have to produce it if you have a damaged gut. That stuff helps your body hold back the endotoxin and lower serotonin. So like butter is the stuff of life. I eat butter constantly. Okay, so all right. So yeah, a lot of people stress. What is causing this? I don't care what the fuck this is. Stress. Stress. A tanked metabolism. Stress. Tanked metabolism, stress. Like, that's stress. And people are like, well, I don't have a stressful job. Okay, but it doesn't have to be emotional stress. Physical stress of eating chemicals, like being around that shit all the time, blue light, not sleeping well. There are things that are stressful to our body beyond outward. Think inward, too. Okay, so the root cause protocol. The book is actually called, I think it's called The Cure, and it has a CU symbol for copper. Let me lower this blind a little bit. 1 second. So the root cause protocol is not the same as, there we go. Well, I guess I should do that next, too. That is a little bit better, although I missed the light. The root cause protocol, I'm like, now it's striped. The root cause protocol is not the same as pro-metabolic eating, but I would argue that the two of them should meet each other. Because I will say that when I started like repairing my health by eating, and I started working with like the pro-metabolic concepts, it's not a diet, by the way. It just teaches you how to like pair all food groups like correctly, and like the dangers of like polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are PUFA oils and things like that. So I think that sometimes when people come into that type of eating, that like I was doing it for like a year and a half, and I had gotten a lot of like gains from it. Like I had physically improved amazingly, but I felt like I just kind of like hit a wall and things stopped improving. Which is fine. Healing is linear. You don't always have to be moving forward. But I think that as humans, we are so demineralized that sometimes, and our food is even demineralized because our soil is depleted, that we have a hard time restabilizing and remineralizing just from food alone. Yes, it should be our primary source, but I think that when you marry the root cause protocol with pro-metabolic eating, you get like a whole, because it really helped me start moving forward when I started like focusing on more remineralization alongside of that type of eating. It was a big change for me. It helped me start moving kind of forward again. So yeah, copper, good sources for copper would definitely be like lots of the things that people are told to be disgusted by. Like heart is really rich in copper, and that's typically easier for people to eat than liver. Liver is a good one. You want to go easy on liver though, because it does have a lot of iron, and if you don't have the right amount of copper, it kind of throws you in the other way, right? But here's a fun one to know. Real cocoa, non-alkalized, is fucking loaded with copper. I make homemade chocolate milk just about every night with fresh goat's milk. Goat's milk is also really high in copper, comparative to cow's milk. But cocoa is really, really, really loaded with a lot of copper, as well as phenols, and a lot of really amazing like antioxidants. I would not suggest cod liver oil. That shit is fucking rancid. It's like as poofa as it gets. But people always think that for copper, but I wouldn't do that. But yeah, just looking at like where copper is sourced from, red meat obviously is a great source of copper. But the organs are the best, honestly. But I drink about probably a quart of homemade chocolate milk a day. And I sweeten it with maple syrup, because maple syrup is loaded with copper and potassium and magnesium and vitamin B's, and it's just, people are like, what's your favorite superfood? I'm like, real food. There's no one food that cures everything. I just like real food. I look for all those little bits of pieces of minerals that I can add in. Okay, so first of all, I'm curious. It's 6 o'clock. I've been on for about an hour, so that's fine. Let me scroll way down. So somebody asked where I get my jewelry from. Almost like 90% of it's family made, and the other stuff I like have randomly made myself or found at thrift stores. This one kind of sucks. I'm allergic to garlic. Oh, I'm so sorry. Garlic is amazing. So I'm allergic to garlic. What would be a good substitute when making my first fire cider? Somebody asked me just right quick, just because it's in my brain. How do you know if you're low in certain minerals? You could do some blood tests, but I would recommend an HTMA hair test. But also just assume you're low in minerals because you probably are. Okay, so I'm allergic to garlic. What could be a good substitute when making my first fire cider? Horseradish. I would use horseradish. And if you're not allergic to all alums, which is the family that garlic is in, I would add extra onion. But horseradish would be a good alternative as well. Okay, so let me scroll again. I just do that and it just goes. So, okay, how about how to rid myself and son of mucus in her chest, coughing and producing, been almost a year now. Okay, so if it's happening to both of you, it's something in your house. Plain and simple. If it was happening to one of you, it could be like post-nasal drip, or you're dealing with some sort of infection that's ongoing. But if it's both of you, I'd get a fucking mold test. I would consider the state of allergens in your house. Do you have carpet? Do you have animals? Do you have birds? Birds are a really bad one for that. Is there mildew growing in your bathroom? Has there been water damage? But it would definitely be worth getting a mold test. You can buy those relatively cheap online, but I would probably try to find a middle grade one, right? Don't go the most expensive, but don't go like the $10 cheap one. You know, one time when I was pregnant with my son, I went and got a dollar store pregnancy test and celebrated because I wasn't pregnant. I was pregnant. It was just a cheap test. Get the middle ground one and start there, because if you guys are dealing with something is causing irritation in your lungs, and so I could say use Mullein, or, you know, try some Pearly Everlasting, or try some nettle to deal with your histamine response. Look into an antihistamine called cyproheptadine, things like that, but find the root cause. And again, because it's both of you, it's probably something in your environment. I would definitely look into that. Okay, so let's see. I did that one. Somebody asked this: have you ever successfully made an anti-mosquito recipe? It's such a hard nut to crack. Yes and no. Successful when it works, but you have to put it on pretty often. Usually I am just infusing something like fresh, come on brain, yarrow alongside catnip or lemon balm in witch hazel, and add a little bit of glycerin so the smell sticks a little bit longer. It works pretty well. You just have to put it on like every 20 or 30 minutes. You know, but I find it works. And one thing that I have found works the best is when I work on my O2 levels, when I know that I'm not doing mouth breathing, when I'm working on my breath work, when my body isn't completely flooded with CO2, because by the way, ticks, mosquitoes, that kind of stuff, they detect you primarily through your breath, right? They also like really stressed out creatures, so if you have like sky high cortisol from a huge amount of stress and you're not breathing right, they're like, oh, that's easy prey. Now, that won't make them go away completely, but I find that over the past couple years that I've worked on my doing breath work, and I've worked on like making sure that my O2 range is in like the 98 range, like 98, 99, you know, like a little finger meter. When I'm outside like milking the goats or what have you at night, and we have like marshes all around us, like at best I get like 1 or 2 mosquitoes, and I'm like, gotta bite. But it's like 1 or 2 versus like having been swarmed in the past, right? And then if I'm out and about, I will definitely use that spray. But if you don't want to make it toxic, you have to put it on often, basically. I have a ton of videos on how to make tinctures and all kinds. I have like hundreds of videos on my YouTube. I think it's at least 100, maybe not hundreds. If I get like 101, it's hundreds. No. Okay, so all right, let's scroll. Okay. Help with social car anxiety, unable to slow down, heart racing, sweaty, talking fast. Welcome to the state of adrenaline. So what's happening when that happens is your system is like, boom, let's fucking pump this person full of adrenaline. Your cortisol spikes. Everything goes up. You are in a state of stress. And honestly, I mean, I've used like catnip tinctures and things like that to calm me down, and that is definitely something that you can look into, like having that on hand in the moment. But like the thing, and again, broken record, but it all comes down to it, right? Remineralize your body. Shit, people are like, I'm not tuning into this lady anymore. She gives the same advice over and over again. But I come back to that again and again because it's literally what has saved me. I used to get stuck in vicious cycles like that, and because my neurodiversity gives me the capacity to talk like I am now, imagine what happens when I nervous talk. People think I'm a methamphetamine. That's what happens when I nervous talk. People think that I'm out of my fucking mind. I literally melt their face with information. I start pouring sweat out of my armpits. I am stuck in a loop. And it's like, for me, because of my neurodiversity, it could turn into like what feels like an out-of-body experience, where like you cannot stop talking, but you know you desperately need to, but you're watching it happen and you're fucking powerless to do anything about it. Your nervous system is completely dysregulated. Your body and your liver is just like, I can't do this, I don't have enough. And what's funny is like when I don't sleep well, when I don't eat well, when I don't rest well, when I'm not working on my vagal nerve tone or my vagus nerve tone, whichever way you like to pronounce it, I am prone to that state. Yeah, and it can be bad, and I know that it's like really embarrassing, and then you're self-conscious and you think about it more, and then you're like, you know what, if I just think about the next topic to say, if I just shift to this thing, it won't be weird, and then you're like trapped in that cycle. So in that instance, you could help yourself before you get in the car or in the social situation where you bring your nervous system down with a Nervine type tincture. It could be something like California Poppy. It could be something like lemon balm. It could be skull cap. It could be a tiny amount of valerian. I like blue vervain if you can't stop thinking about what to say. She's a pretty good one for people who have a lot of control issues. And that doesn't mean you're trying to control people around you, but like when we can't stop talking, we're trying to control the narrative that's going around us. We're trying to control our nervousness by controlling the situation, right? So it just kind of keeps going like that. Yeah, and it's just, it can be hard and it can be embarrassing. One time, when I was coming off of benzos, it was the worst because I had like to learn my brain like sober, and like I invited this elder gentleman over who was a patient of mine at the time for growing medical marijuana, and I invited him over to 4th of July, and it was when I was coming off of benzos, and it was so bad, my inability to stop talking, that my sister, my older sister from the kitchen, and I was in the living room, said, "Take a breath, sister," right? And I was like, oh fuck, I've been probably what I call intensity talking him for like a half an hour. And I went into the bathroom and I had like a full panic attack. Not an anxiety attack, a panic attack. And I haven't seen him to this day. I don't know if he's still alive. He was older, and this was over a decade ago, but if he's still alive, he thought I was on methamphetamine. He didn't know, and I don't blame him, and I'm like, if he's passed away, maybe he knows now that I was just going through some shit. But so, like, I definitely sympathize with, like, that feeling of feeling trapped and things like that. Okay, so next question, and let me roll through. I see these ones that people have voted from. So this person says, I've been seeing people in Appalachia, where they're from, posting videos of eating one pokeberry. Safe? I mean, technically, yeah. Some people do it. People have been doing it for a long time. I don't like it because I can't control it. I just talked about control issues, right? But I mean, like, you don't know, like, if you've never done it before. The thing about poke root, the tincture, and or like the poke root berry, she's like an end of the world plant that I want to have on hand. Like, she's really good at stimulating lymphatic function, going after infections. I like her for infections more than I do viruses, although I would say she's antiviral in the way that she fucking forces your lymph nodes to do their work, basically. But sometimes that can backfire on you, because if you're already having a really extreme reaction to a virus in your body, because viruses don't make you sick, your immune system does in a reaction to it, it could, like, give your immune system an automatic weapon and, like, make it stronger than it needs to be, and then your symptoms get worse. However, it can also cause psychosis in some people, and that can be done with one drop of tincture. So, like, somebody's grandma or somebody might have been using one pokeberry a day throughout winter just fine, but if you've never had it, one pokeberry could put you into a bad episode. I usually tell people, if I talk with them more in depth about it, like, if you have a history of schizophrenia or like multiple personality disorder, anything like that, in your family, especially like immediate family, like a mom, a brother, a sister, an aunt, something like that, I probably wouldn't use poke root, just because it can bring it out. And I don't mean it goes away after you stop using it. It's just one of those things that's like, use it, but, like, be careful. Okay, so, alright, let me get a drink here. So somebody was asking about what I was talking about earlier in regards of, like, intensity talking. That's just what I've named it. You don't have to get a diagnosis to know that you're over talking and your nervous system is, like, fucking dysregulated because you can't stop the fast-paced talking and the anxiety. That's just a state that your body's in that you can work on. It's not necessarily a diagnosis. Let me see. So this person said, the fancy Latin name for passion flower. They have passion flower growing. I have passion flower growing in my yard. What are your thoughts on its uses and what to make with it? I wish I could get her to grow well here. I live in the high mountain desert, so she's plenty happy in the summertime, but then when the cold hits, and I tried growing her in a pot, but then it's so hot here that it fries the root system, so I'm like, I can't. I would make a tincture out of her fresh, or a tea out of her dry. She's a really good one for supporting the all-around nervous system, like calming. She's pretty good for immune system function, somewhat good for digestive health, but mainly she's like a very, like, passion flowers, like very just like calming, relaxed. I like her as like an evening tea. She can help with menstrual cramps a little bit, but I think she almost helps in that way because she is relaxing you, and when you relax, your muscles relax, and then your cramps aren't as bad. Okay, so let me see. Let me swipe way down here to the beginning. Here's one. Hi, I'm looking for herbs that stimulate red blood cell and platelet production. Well, for that, you could look into burdock. Anything, honestly, if you want to stimulate anything blood related, you need to start supporting your liver. If your counts are low, there's something going on in your liver. And just because an enzyme test, just because a liver test came back okay, doesn't mean it's okay. I've seen people with yellow skin be like, they say my liver's fine. I'm like, it's not, bro. It's really not. So I would also consider looking. Burdock is a good one. They call her a blood builder, but really what she's doing is just stimulating liver production. But you could also look into milk thistle. Make sure that it's made with the seed and it's not an extract. I mean, you can make a tincture of the seed, but usually nowadays, like, you get something online, they're like, it's made from an extract. What they're really doing is like extracting it with CO2 and making like a really potent oil. That tends to make people feel gross, and they're not always using the seed. They can use the whole plant. You want it to be the seed. She is pretty good at supporting liver function. And then, you know, making sure that your body has, again, the minerals that it needs to produce this stuff. You can't expect your body to create healthy blood, you know, and platelets and support your lymphocytes and your, like, all of your, like, white blood cell and everything like that if it's like running on empty, you know. And another thing that I've been researching lately, I don't really necessarily like the name of it, but they call it like the milk cure. So like the concept is like milk, and this will fucking creep people out, but milk is essentially like a white blood in the way that it has a lot of the same building blocks that blood has. Think about it, like when you're born, like milk is what like develops your body no matter what species of mammal you are. And milk has been pretty amazing, and they've done a lot of really interesting stuff back in the day with what they called the milk cure, which is where they were like, people were like dying of fucking tuberculosis and like way worse things, and like basically were like, have some milk. No, they drank a lot of milk. There's a protocol to it. I don't necessarily know that I would go full into that, but like if you could find a good source for raw milk, that really has been shown to help increase like blood production and like immune system functions and things like that. Okay, so yeah, burdock, people are like, oh, I don't know if I trust that herb. I'm like, it's a fucking food. Like, people, I mean, beyond like using it as an herbal medicine, like the roots are delicious. They're used all the way from a lots of place over in Asia all the way over into Europe. It's been around for a very long time. Some stores you can go buy the root to cook with it, you know, but you can make a tincture as well, or a tea. She makes a pretty decent tea if you like a coffee alternative if you roast her root up. Oh, and by the way, if you're gonna dig the root yourself, make sure it's the first year root, not the second year root. Second year root won't kill you. It's hollow because it's not repairing itself to live anymore. So this person said, hi April, I have been struggling with an overgrowth of bacteria or a yeast in my lady parts. Any suggestions? So, yeah, when our vagina is out of balance like that, our entire body is. Like she is saying, whoa, we don't have enough good bacteria. But I want you to know that, like, the yeast that's growing down there and other bacteria isn't, unless you've caught the bacteria from somewhere, obviously, but most of the time, yeast and other bacteria are opportunistic, and your body will never leave a place empty. So something has happened, something has gone out of whack to where the meant to be bacteria down there has died off, and so naturally the yeast and other bacteria that are in your body have colonized it. Put some yogurt in your vagina. People are like, what the fuck, don't listen to this lady. But no, plain full fat yogurt. You don't want the kind with like fake sugar or anything in it, and it needs to be dairy. So fun fact that I'll disgust people, and it shouldn't, but it's just a fact. Did you know that the bacteria that makes yogurt is basically the bacteria that's in a vagina? Like, if you want to know what pussy tastes like, eat some plain yogurt. Right? Like, it's similar. But I really love yogurt for repairing that bacteria down there. Using it internally won't hurt you. You can use it for yeast infections. You can use it like a lotion. And so, yeah, it really helps. But also, eat the yogurt. Not necessarily, I mean, you can eat the yogurt you put inside of yourself if you want to, but like eating that yogurt, helping your body to rebalance that, resist the urge to clean down there. You are self-cleaning. You don't need to douche. You don't need to like put a bunch of stuff in there. Now, one thing that I have found helpful if you like need some relief from the itching on top of using the yogurt, what I'll do is I'll make some chamomile tea. And then once it's like lukewarm, I'll mix in some yogurt. You don't want to use hot tea. And then I use, you know, those like big, like, they're like livestock syringes. There's no needle on it. It's just meant for like pulling up liquid. I don't want you to put so much inside of yourself that it goes into your cervix. It's just a little bit. I mix it with the chamomile and the and the yogurt, and it's really soothing. Chamomile is amazing for stopping itching, but helping to like kill gram-positive bacteria. But it won't kill the yogurt culture because it's not a gram-positive bacteria. So like you're helping get rid of maybe unbeneficial bacteria, and then like it's also kind of an antifungal, so it kind of attacks the yeast a little bit, and then you're putting the correct bacteria back in there. And so yeah, people are like, oh my god, but people have been doing it for a long time, and I've tried to find the article that I read like fucking 15 years ago or something like that, but there's a theory. I just want to tell you this story, and I think it's accurate. So it was from like Norway, somewhere over there, which is where a lot of people don't realize, like that whole area, like Northern Europe and even Eastern Europe, is where like most yogurt and kefir and type cultures come from to an extent. And they were pretty sure that what happened was after a woman would give birth, the practice was that she would sit in a bowl of milk, typically like goat or sheep milk, because that's what they had over there, predominantly. But you couldn't really afford to just throw food out back then, right? So she'd sit in there, after birth, after like the bleeding had stopped a bit, and she's like working to heal herself. But that introduced vaginal bacteria to the milk, which then turned into yogurt. And it makes sense. It makes sense if you think about the concept that basically the bacteria that is found in most yogurt that's used in most cultures is almost bioidentical to what's in our vaginas. And so it's like, I don't know, it's pretty... I don't know. It tracks, right? I can't find where I read it. I don't know if it's verified, but a lot of people have used the milk for things besides food for a long time for healing and things like that. So I'm just saying, like, okay. So, let me scroll way down here. Best combination of allies for shift work sleep. Oh, there's a train going by. I have my window open, so you're going to hear a little bit of a train. He's way down there, and I live on a hill in the middle of nowhere, but we still have a train that goes by. Best combination of allies for shift work sleep. Actually, I don't know that there's necessarily any plants that are going to help you, like, mitigate the lack of circadian rhythm in that. You could, of course, use like nervines that help your system be a little bit less stressed out. But what I would do is try my best to get sunlight in your eyes, right? Like, but then also during the day, of course, the fact about like blocking everything out. But like, if you happen to wake up before it's dark, go outside in the sun. Go outside in the sun, get light in your eyes. Now, you could start working with red light therapy during like if you just wake up and it's dark, do red light therapy. Like, you don't have to buy one of those fucking stupid expensive panels either. You can get like an incandescent red bulb, like it's actually red colored, or a chicken brooder light. Be careful with those though, they get hot, they could cause a fire. Anything that's red light, so right when you wake up, put red light in your eyes. The sun in the morning, within the first couple hours of it rising, has a particular red color, like the golden hour, and that tells your body's circadian rhythm to start producing cortisol. It tells you to start waking up. And then if you kind of in the evening when you're home, which is probably in the morning, if you block off all of the dark light, usually you can look at like the sunset and it'll make your body start reducing cortisol and increasing melatonin naturally. But I don't know if you'd be able to do that because you're probably either asleep or at work when the sun is setting. So I think the best thing would be the red light in the morning when you wake up. It would at least tell your body that that's morning time, that's when you're functioning. Okay, so yeah, there are a lot of tinctures that you can use. I mean, you can use like California poppy, catnip tincture, skullcap. Valerian would definitely knock you out. I would probably cycle through them so you don't become dependent on like any one. You can use teas of most of these as well. But like also helping your body's natural rhythm. I want to say there's a podcast about it. What the hell is his name? The Huberman podcast, I believe. He has one that's really cool about light therapy, but then one about shift work. I've not listened to it. I like his podcast. I don't like buy into everything he says, but I like that it's all research based. And I've heard some people talk about that shift work podcast. They're usually like an hour and a half long, so they're full of information. But I would definitely look into that one. I believe it's called the Huberman podcast, I think. Okay, let me scroll way down here. How about, let's see, I gotta scroll further back because I've seen most of those. Let me see. Let's see. Everything I always read says use EOs, which I don't want to do. So this person is saying everything they read about says use essential oils, and they don't want to do. You don't have to. I wouldn't. Fuck. So the essential oil industry is a multi-million-dollar industry, and it is plagued with MLM representatives that got a little booklet, that have bought a little book, that don't have, I'm not trying to talk shit here, apologize in advance. If you do not have the working knowledge or confidence to work with a plant in its whole state, you have no fucking business working with a plant that's been refined to its most volatile compounds. Essential oils was a term developed by the industry to make you not realize that they are actually VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Do not let the word organic throw you off. It just means that it's been made from a plant. It takes like one drop of peppermint essential oils, for example. It's like 50 plus pounds of plant matter just to make that one drop, or fill a whole bottle anyhow. And it's like, you can't dilute it because one drop would take like 10 gallons of water to make it back to its natural state. They're crap, they're toxic, they're killing hands-on herbalism, they're hurting people every day, and when people talk about being hurt by them, they get attacked by people who are like super passionate about them because they don't really know them. And they're like, there's no studies that say they're dangerous. The fuck if they aren't. You just don't know the name of the terpene. One that's really easy to understand is like, people are like, oh, I love the yarrow essential oil because it's blue and it's really cool colored. Like, it's really pretty. Yeah, theogene is really pretty until it turns you into fucking, like, a psychotic person, destroys your liver, because that's why it is blue. Because theogene is a terpene in yarrow. Won't hurt you in natural state. Won't hurt you if you make a tea. Won't hurt you if you make a tincture. You fucking repress it enough and refine it enough that it turns it blue. You are taking a hugely unnatural amount that you would never naturally like encounter in your lifetime, and it'll just fuck you up. And it's dangerous. And I'm not just talking about ingesting them. So don't be like, well, I don't ingest them. You ingest them every time you breathe them in. It's secondhand. When you breathe it into your lungs, it goes into your bloodstream. It starts in fucking up your entire endocrine system, which is your hormones. It starts fucking destroying all the bacteria in your gut, and because they are potent antibacterial and antibiotics and antiviral, people are like, they work. I'm like, I'm not saying they don't work. I'm saying it's like constantly taking an antibiotic every day of your life. There's even studies that are starting to come out that talk about that they're contributing to antibiotic resistance, right? So somebody asked how to dispose with essential oils. I would say to pour them on a bare piece of ground or gravel, something that's already dead, because they will kill a plant. They will eat the skin off your hand, and they will strip paint off of, like, you know, this cupboard, or like lacquer. They will fucking eat through wood. Like, just get rid of them. If you want to learn more about me ranting about that, the link in my bio will take you to it, and I am in the slow process of writing a book about it, which will give me some fucking hate mail. You know, no one's really, there's 1,000,001 books about how awesome essential oils are, but there's no book about how dangerous they are. Not really. I also talk about it in depth in the book I already wrote, but that was just one chapter. I'm kind of taking that and expanding on it, right, and telling people how to be essential oil free. Let me check the time here. Okay, I want to answer some more questions. I think I'm going to go rapid fire now because I feel like I haven't gotten through a ton. This person said, and I've seen a couple of these, so this will answer like 4 or 5. I'm looking for ideas on calming down restless leg syndrome. You're deficient in magnesium. I don't care what anybody tells you, you're deficient in magnesium. Even if the tests say you're okay in magnesium, your body's not absorbing it. So if your body's not absorbing the magnesium, you are probably also deficient in vitamin D. And it's kind of like a cascading event, but like you can use, you can try magnesium oil topically. It's really easy to make at home, where you can buy it. There's no real oil involved. You just put enough magnesium salt in the water that it feels like an oil, and try that topically to see if it will calm down the kicking. And then you could use something like magnesium magnesium glycinate. That's a really gentle one that's not going to make you shit like crazy. You can take magnesium baths, magnesium foot soaks, basically like magnesium back into your life. But also make sure that you are getting potassium and a lot of sunlight. Potassium, magnesium, potassium and salt in general go hand in hand. If you've got eye twitches, magnesium. You know, if you can't sleep at night, magnesium. Like, everybody is deficient in magnesium. Okay, so let's see. Let me scroll down and tap one here. Somebody asked if they have joint pain. Will your extra strength hemp oil pain salve be available soon? I've got a big batch going. So, are there any allies to help with seizures or epilepsy? I mean, you've probably already heard of CBD. That's probably a really, really, really good one. But also, and again, broken record, I read a study a little while back and I've seen people talk about, like, the correlation between high serotonin, right? I have really, like, holy shit, the past, like, year, it's like, everywhere I look, when I start researching something that's going on in the human body, I'm like, holy fuck, it's serotonin. Shit. And we're like, well, why is everybody so elevated? Well, it's a stress hormone. If your serotonin is elevated, your cortisol is elevated. And if your cortisol is elevated, you've got estrogen dominance. They don't really raise one at a time. They all come up in tandem, and it's all to do with the fact that, like, we're basically being poisoned by our food. And we're being poisoned by, like, I don't know any person that isn't stressed right now. You might think you're not stressed, but, like, sometimes denial is helpful. But also, like, the past 2.5 years, like, they're, like, whoever they the fuck are, whatever, it's an intentional, like, attack of stress, right? You're constantly in a hyper vigilant state, and even if you're feeling better than you have in the past couple of years, like, it takes time to repair from that. And so serotonin, and working on how to help your gut eliminate that, because you shit all these hormones out, right? Want to lower serotonin, make sure you're taking a shit twice a day. And I don't mean with, like, laxatives or whatever, but, like, you should be going to the bathroom no less than once a day. Twice a day is better. I can tell when I don't feel well that I'm like, ooh, my serotonin is, like, really high. Sometimes you can try, if you're not dealing with constipation, okay, how about this? Here's an experiment. If you don't think it's serotonin, then it might not be. However, try taking, like, 3 to 6 activated charcoal capsules. If you're not dealing with constipation. If you're already constipated, don't do that. But if you're, you're alright, just try it. Try it and see how you feel. I'm guessing at least 8 out of 10 of you will feel calm within an hour or so, and you're like, whoa, I feel really sleepy or calm. It absorbs serotonin and cortisol. It lowers stress hormones, right? It's also absorbing endotoxins, which, by the way, if you have bad gut in your or bad bacteria in your gut, you have a high endotoxin load. And guess what endotoxin does, which is like a bad bacteria? It causes serotonin, right? And it's just like, holy fuck. And it's been such a huge, like, awakening for me. Just to, like, I always knew that, like, SSRIs were bullshit. I mean, I'm not saying that they haven't helped some people. I'm just saying, like, the concept of it. But, like, really, like, diving into that, like, that system of the body, I'm like, Jesus Christ. It's been, like, just something to really, 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 but yeah, it has been a really big path to walk down that has helped me a lot. Okay, so let's see another question that I can say is blamed on serotonin. No, I'm joking. I don't know if it is or not. Ooh, this one's scary. Oh, it went away. I tapped on it and it went away. They asked, I want to find it again. I saw what it said, but they might not know that I'm answering it. They went into a coma and woke up with sepsis, which is fucking blood poisoning, and they're recovering from that, obviously, or they wouldn't be talking. Sepsis is no joke. I would work really, really closely with, I talked about it earlier, milk thistle and burdock, helping your liver, because ultimately all that bacteria would be processing through your liver, and you need to rebuild blood. I would be making sure that I was eating, like, a lot of, like, mineral-rich foods, especially like liver, heart, even kidneys if you're brave enough. They're not bad. I like to saute them up. Things like that. Making bone broth, eating lots of gelatin. Gelatin is really crazy because it has a lot of, like, taurine, lysine, all these amazing amino acids that help your liver function, because your liver's got a really hard job right now. You know, you're wanting to rebuild blood and stuff like that, but you're also wanting to help your liver, because she just had a rough fucking night, right? Like, she just had a real bad night, and she's not feeling real great, and you just asked her to, like, do all of your errands for you. So if you could start supporting your liver function with things like the milk thistle and the burdock, would be two pretty good ones. You could also use Oregon grape root. I would not buy the Bourbon capsules, which people will be like, yeah, but like that's too potent. You need more of a balanced blend. So if you were working with Oregon grapefruit tincture, that'd be a good one. And plus, they tend to make that out of golden seal, which is like really over harvested and toxic, and they just like rape the shit out of the land to make those Bourbon tinctures. Okay, so all right, let's answer some more questions, because I think my husband left to go pick up my daughter, so I'm just going to sit here until I hear him come back. This one's tricky. Let's answer that. What do you suggest for diabetic neuropathy symptoms in the feet? It means your kidneys aren't happy. Like, whenever we get, like, neuropathy, like, it's typically kidneys. Like, it's all related. People think of the pancreas when they think of diabetes, because you are insulin resistant, and that means your Randall cycle is broken. Your Randall cycle, this is your cell in your body. You have billions, gajillions of them. When you eat sugar, I'm just simplifying this, when you eat a carbohydrate, your liver says, hey, pancreas, let's kick out some insulin, and then, hey, gallbladder, let's kick out some glucogen, and those two things are what balance your, like, the insulin keeps your sugar from going too high, but the glucogen stops your blood sugar from going too low. But if you are eating a lot of PUFA oils, which everybody blames diabetes on sugar, but it's not the sugar, it's the polyunsaturated fatty acids that we're saturated in. This oil basically, for lack of a better scientific fucking chart to explain it, if you have too much of these saturated, like, unhealthy, like, man-made rancid fats in your diet, they basically coat this cell, and then the insulin comes along. I don't have enough fucking things here. I was putting up a shelf, so I have screw things. The insulin comes along, and it's like, hey, I'm trying to put this fucking glucose in the cell, but it's not working. And so it pumps out more and more and more. And then you don't have to worry about the glucogen, because now your blood sugar is going like crazy because it can't get into your cell. This does not answer your question about diabetic neuropathy, but really the only way to resolve that is to start, like, fixing the Randall cycle, where your body can put carbohydrates into your cell. Most diabetics would see, especially if you're type 2, I should say. If you're type 1, that's different. You're kind of the opposite. But you're insulin sensitive because your body keeps trying to create it, because it's like, God damn it, I need to put this insulin in, this sugar, into your cell and into your liver stores, right? Because that's where your liver stores your excess sugar. But if you don't have a happy liver, you don't have a happy kidneys. I hope you have more than one kidney. And so you could also do things like support your kidney function. Topically, you could use like a cayenne-based pain salve, especially if you've got the pins and needles, not just like dull nerve endings where your feet feel numb, right? But I would definitely look into removing PUFA fats from your diet. You're like, well, that's not hard. Take it one step at a time, because they're in everything. It's really easy to get overwhelmed. If you're cooking with them, start by eliminating that. Look up what PUFA oils are, first of all, which, you know, it's like canola, safflower, sunflower, vegetable oil, grapeseed, sunflower, all that fucking crap that's in everything. It actually gets overwhelming. It's in everything we eat. Even if you're buying organic, I don't care, it's in it. I maybe have after a while, you're like, yes, when you read the back of the label and it doesn't have it in it, you know? I've maybe got like 10 or 15 processed food brands in my house because they don't have PUFAs in them. Everything else you start cooking from scratch, basically, because that's the only way to control it. But start slow. You don't have to get rid of them all at once. Then it becomes overwhelming and you're likely to quit. But yeah, if you look into the pro-metabolic diet, I shouldn't say diet, but way of eating, and the work of Dr. Raymond Peat, like, I've seen people like get rid of type 2 diabetes without having to like starve themselves of all carbohydrates. It's basically the fats. Okay, so let's see. Next question. How can I make an infused oil-based shampoo? I don't know what an oil shampoo is. Like, does it lather? Like, do you mean like you're making a soap? Like, if you're making a soap with a real, like, lye-based process, you would just infuse the oil that you're using in the soaping process, right? But also make an herbal infusion with water for your water portion of the soap. That tends to carry over scent better, and you'll have a little bit, of herbal property destruction on each side. You know what I do? I buy, and I'm transparent about this with people. First of all, I run a little apothecary. It's a little bit more than little, but I have to be like CGMP FDA certified, and not certified, but like compliant and things like that. And the process of making soap, I know how to make soap like crazy, but like the ability to be compliant to make soap is a whole different can of worms, because you're working with lye and toxic, like, well, not toxic, but caustic chemicals, right? So I don't do that. I buy bulk blank Castile soap from suppliers, right? Castle soap, Castile, however the hell it's supposed to be pronounced. And I take herbs, like dry herbs, make sure they're dry herbs, and I put them in a, like a nylon bag that's food grade, and I infuse the soap with the herbs. I could still make my own. I think I'd still do it that way, honestly, because you're not getting a destruction of the herbal properties. There's very minimal heat involved, and that's how a lot of you might have tried like my sweet rosemary like hair shampoo, or my bearskin itch body shampoo, things like that, body wash, and that's how I do that. It's been really pretty cool, and you can go, you don't have to buy, I buy like 5-gallon buckets of it, but you can just go buy some like unscented Dr. Bronner's soap or something like that, that's Castile soap, and infuse herbs into it, then strain it out, and that would be a way to do that if you weren't looking to make your own soap. Okay, so let me answer another question here. Let's see. My sister has very arthritic hands, painful and enlarged joints. Depends on the type of arthritis. Is it osteo or is it RA? Rheumatoid arthritis. Osteo is like wear and tear from like your joints. That one you could work with like comfrey infusion, making sure that you're eating more calcium, eating lots of gelatin, making all the bone broth, eating the knuckles off the chicken bone, which I've done for life. Make your own gelatin, things like that, because you're trying to give your body what it needs to repair those damaged joints. If you are dealing with rheumatoid arthritis, that's an autoimmune issue. So you might be able to work with something like turkey tail mushroom to help slow down your immune system's attack. You have to be really careful when you have autoimmune, because if you take something that stimulates the immune system, it can make your symptoms worse, because your immune system is what's attacking you. Making it stronger isn't the answer. But turkey tail mushrooms are an immune modulator, meaning instead of making your immune system like go sky high, it says, whoa, calm the fuck down. But if your autoimmune issue makes your immune system really low, it's like, whoa, come back up. So it modulates, right? It puts you right in the center where you need to be. And so turkey tail mushroom might help calm down those issues. Another thing that's pretty interesting is bull thistle, which is related to milk thistle, but different, same family, different type of thistle. I read an article, a little bit of a study a while back, and I did a video on the plant, I believe, as well on my YouTube, about how they were successfully treating about half the people that had RA with bull thistle. It seems like it might be the concept is with rheumatoid arthritis is that it's your immune system that's causing it, but sometimes you get bacteria deposits in your joints, right? And then it's your immune system that's attacking that bacteria. So it's kind of like you have an autoimmune thing, but it's also there's something there that's pissing your immune system off. And they found that a tincture made of bull thistle seeds and or roots or upper above ground parts seemed to be helpful for that. And then of course you could also look into using something topical. I think that something that made with cayenne will likely give her far more relief than something that's just like all the CBD creams they charge for. Cayenne actually has the capacity to shut down your nerve endings' ability to send pain signals to your brain, which sounds fucking terrifying, but that's how most pain medications work. Yeah, bull thistle was what I talked about. Drink of water. Okay, scroll way down. So, scroll further down. It only scrolls to the same thing. So, talked a lot about liver support already. Oh, this one's an interesting one. Oh, it went away. I don't like, they're like, you've answered too many. They said that whenever they drink water, they get nauseated. I don't know if it's only water, but it must be, or they probably would have said other things. And every time they drink water, they get nauseated. Your gallbladder isn't happy. So what's probably happening there is, okay, this is water, this is orange juice. All right, it's just liquid, right? No difference. There's a big difference. Juice is something, or anything that's not water is something that when you drink it, it triggers your liver, which triggers your gallbladder to create bile, which is how you digest food. Water doesn't really do that. Water doesn't really trigger bile production because there's nothing to be digested, if that makes sense. There's nothing in the water. There's not a single calorie, nothing, right? There's no real nutrients to even pull out of it if we consider most water sources these days are purified and things like that. So when you are drinking water, you already probably have a gallbladder that is not producing enough bile, and then what's happening is you are watering down, for lack of a better term, well, that is what happens in your gut, the already low acid, and then when you have low acid in your stomach, you typically feel nauseated. Like that's a prime example of what it feels like to have low stomach acid. You can also have burping, nausea, tiredness. You could also have maybe how good are your shits? This is gonna sound funny, but like if you are having to wipe a bunch after you take a shit, like, and there's like stuff left behind, like your bile isn't doing great, like your digestion isn't fantastic. Like ghost wipes are what you want. Like you don't have ghost wipes because you're shitting out like deer pellets or like rabbit pellets because you're so constipated, but if there's a lot of mess on your toilet paper after you wipe, it's a sign that your digestive tract isn't happy. In this particular instance, if that's happening on top of being nauseated when you're drinking water, you probably have low bile production. I would also look into I don't know if that's the same person. They said inflamed bleeding in stomach, but doctors say it's not ulcers. I don't know if that's the same person I'm talking to. But I would look into actually supplementing with bile. I like ancestral supplements. They have a bile supplement. Like, see what happens. See what happens if you start taking a bile, like actual bile. It's usually made out of like cow or like, I like them because they're in New Zealand and their cattle like just don't have diseases over there. It's all grass fed and everything like that. I would start supplementing with bile. I would start drinking bitters like dandelion tea, chicory. You could start supporting your liver function with the herbs that I mentioned earlier, like the burdock and the milk thistle. Probably don't do them all at once. Start with dandelion tea. Maybe she's a nice digestive. I would definitely check into that and start working on building up your acid production and seeing. It won't be instant, right? Like, don't be like, I took 2 pills, still get nauseated from water. But pay attention to what happens to your digestive tract. See what happens, like are you wiping, like, is there less to wipe away after you take a shit? You know, like, are you digesting food better? Are you finding that you go to the bathroom more often? And that's not a bad thing. I would definitely look into that, because nausea with nausea with water to me just screams low stomach acid. Okay, so I'm seeing. Okay, anyhow. Okay, so let me scroll to another question. Best herbs to promote milk production during breastfeeding. And people are gonna, of course, like, people will say milk thistle, fenugreek, all that kind of stuff. And I will say you need to eat more protein. You need to eat more, especially protein, like milk producing animals, whether you're a human or a goat or a cow or whatever you're milking. Some people milk camels. Or sheep or whatever, you need more protein. If you want to produce a lot of breast milk, you need more protein, you need more fats, you need more food. Did you know that you need more calories while you're breastfeeding than you did when you're pregnant? I would probably not eat any less than 3,500 calories a day if I was breastfeeding. That sounds excessive, but remember, you are like milking out these calories into your child. Like, you are giving out like full fat milk. It is taking that, it is burning it from you. When women have babies and breastfeed and they end up with like bad teeth and like brittle bones, it's because they either didn't have the resources, but they weren't taking in enough to equate what's going out. So really increasing your protein, and I'm all for animal protein. You can get protein from plants, but it's not the same. It's not used the same. I'm not saying you can't have a balance of both, but like, yeah, there was one lady forever ago that she had given birth to premature twins, and she wasn't able to like produce very much milk at all. And with preemies, it's really, really, really important that they get breast milk. It's like life or death type of situation. And she was talking with her other herbalists and midwives, or like, take these herbs, and it wasn't working. And I'm like, you need to eat more protein. I was just like, it was just in a random Facebook conversation. I'm like, you need way, way more protein in your diet. And like, it was like a month or so later, she like sent me a message. She's like, you saved my baby's lives, because like suddenly I could make all this milk. And I'm like, yeah, we need protein. Like, I know that if my goats or if my dairy cow starts lowering in production and they're not going into heat or something like that, they need more protein, right? Like, something has shifted. Like, right now it's summertime, so all the green is dying back and the grass isn't as fresh, and they start drying up a little bit. I'm like, okay, now you need alfalfa because you need more protein to be able to make that milk. Okay, so yeah, I mean, brewer's yeast could help with milk production if you're low in vitamin B's, but it won't make up for the protein. What's funny? People are like, oh, well, I don't know that I need that, I need an herb. But if you look into anything about dairy animals, pretend you are a cow. If you were a farmer and you looked into anything about how a farmer is increasing milk production out of their animals, none of them are going to tell you what herbs they're feeding their cattle. And even if they're on a biodynamic farm, they're still using things that are high in protein. They're like, oh, well, they eat a lot of clover hay. Cool, it's really high in protein. Animals are different, so they can assimilate protein out of plant sources better than an omnivore can, because they have multiple stomachs. They're ruminators. They're fermenting it. They're really breaking it down. Our stomachs don't do that. But that is the end game. The end game always comes down to enough protein. Okay, so let me scroll way down here. Somebody said, what do you recommend for stimulation of scalp hair growth or controlling hair loss? Hair loss, whether it's in man or women, is specifically from metabolic syndrome and a fucked up thyroid, which almost everybody has a shitty thyroid, even if you take a test and it's like, oh, it says it's within range. But they've changed the ranges. The range now that says humans are okay when they take a thyroid test, 30, 40 years ago, we would have been like, holy shit, are you okay? Because that's how much they've changed the range that's allowed. Working on your metabolic health, take your temperature in the morning when you wake up, and then take it. See if, and under your armpit or under your tongue, not your forehead, see if you're actually at 98.6. I bet most of you don't have temperature that's 98.6. If you do, that's awesome. But if it's low, it means your thyroid's not happy. And so when it comes to stimulating hair growth, doing things like working with nettle, make sure that you're eating enough, making sure that you have the minerals you need, making sure that you're not using a lot of thyroid repressive herbs. A lot of mints, you can use them, but like mints have a tendency to repress thyroid function if you don't take breaks from them, you know, like you can use, you know, like a motherwort tincture as needed, but like if you are taking that motherwort tincture every single day in and out, or a lemon balm or something like that, you're likely repressing your thyroid function. And then topically, I really like rosemary for stimulating hair growth. I like comfrey for making the hair stronger so it doesn't fall out. The rosemary, back to her, is pretty good at stimulating follicle production, which is what makes your hair come out. And recently I've been working with making a coffee and aspirin blend to rub topically on the scalp, like a hair oil, but also kind of like exfoliating. Both of those things are pretty good at stimulating hair growth, making sure that you're getting enough sun. Vitamin D is really imperative for keeping and maintaining hair. Okay, so, all right, let me scroll again. Somebody said, in what ways do you work with dill, if at all? Dill is a really good digestive supporter. You can make a tincture for her, and in that way, I feel like she's pretty good at supporting like parasite elimination. I like her for that. You can also use her for like liver support, any of those bitters, right? Dill is a bitter. Dill is good, and you can get sweet varieties, but she's still in that bitter herb family. I use her more as a tea for supporting that digestive functions. But a lot of people overlook culinary herbs. Right? They're like, oh, that's just something we cook with. Most of them are in the mint family, you know, like rosemary, garden sage, which isn't a sage but a mint, thyme, oregano, dill. All these typically have pretty good upper respiratory support if we're feeling like we're congested with a, you know, some sort of bacteria or a virus, bronchitis, whatever's going on there. But they're pretty good for supporting stomach, digestion, liver, gallbladder, immune system, mild aches and pains if they're in the mint family, even a little bit of fever. People really overlook them, and it's a shame because even if you live in the middle of the city, those are herbs that you can get fresh. You might have to order them on the internet to get bulk amounts that aren't too expensive, but like you could make a fresh thyme tincture, you could make a ginger tincture, you could make a horseradish tincture, you can make a dill tincture, oregano, garden sage. All these things are available to you fresh at the moment. You know, we can order this stuff online, and I do a lot of that. I grow a lot of it too, but I'm like, you know, I live somewhere where rosemary isn't super happy in the wintertime, so if I want to fill like a 3-gallon barrel to make the size of tinctures I make, I have an organic farm that I buy from. You know, it's okay not to grow and produce or harvest everything that you use. That sounds stressful to me. Okay, so let me scroll and so that's an interesting question. What do you use for de-icer in the winter to not over-contaminate the soil? I use heat things that I plug in. That way I'm not using de-icer. I don't use de-icer in like my window shields or anything like that. It's kind of pointless where I live. We have those like scraping tools to get de-icer off of stuff. I don't use de-icer in any of my livestock tanks, and I don't use de-icer in in my apothecary I have a big water holding tank that when it's full I pump it through an oil separator because I don't want that oil to go in my septic, and then I pump it into my septic tank because that was so much easier than trying to get a second whichever septic tank put in. But I use the livestock trough heaters. They're safe to go in plastic. They don't take a whole lot of power. They only kick on once below freezing. Sometimes I still have to break the ice off the trough on the top, you know, because it's not, but underneath it's all just water. It's not too bad. Okay, so let me scroll through the questions. Talked about that. Oh, here's one. Chronic tinnitus since the big C word, the new C word. They got it 2 years ago, and they've got chronic tinnitus. You know, most of the time tinnitus, regardless of when you developed it, is caused by a few things, even though they'd be like, we don't know the cause. Actually, here's a fun story. About 2 years ago, before I started taking care of myself in earnest, I got tinnitus suddenly so bad that I was having a hard time hearing. It was like driving me insane, and I
went to the doctor, and I got a fucking appointment for a specialist. It took me 2 months to see, and I walk in there, and there's this old man who was clearly tired of his job, needed to retire probably 10 years ago. Says, yeah, I told him how it happened. I woke up in the night, I was drenched in sweat, my ears were ringing so bad that it woke me up, and then I just had it since then. And he was like, nobody really knows the cause of tinnitus. Hands me a pamphlet, tells me there's websites in there where I can listen to sound that helps, and to have a good day. I was in that man's office for less than 10 minutes. So I said, fuck you, the medical system again, and I started doing research, and it turns out that tinnitus is typically caused from sky-high cortisol. You are stressed the fuck out. Or an EBV infection, of which I had both. Almost everybody has the Epstein-Barr virus in their body, even if you didn't catch mono as a kid. It's just like herpes viruses, even if they don't turn into genital herpes, there's hundreds of them, and they are just kind of like a super adapter at being in human body. So don't feel bad when you're like, I don't have EBV. Yeah, you do. 99% of the world does. And so when you start doing things to help lower your cortisol, start working on your stress load, start, working with vagal nerve training, breath work, using herbs like milky oats or linden, things that help you reduce that stress capacity and lower your cortisol levels. I like CBD for that a lot. Although most studies say you want like a mid dose, not a max huge dose. She's pretty good at calming that down and just like working on your sleep cycle. It's fucking work. It is work. But I went from having tinnitus so bad that I thought I was going to go deaf because I couldn't hear people talk, to I don't have tinnitus anymore. And I had EBV on top of high cortisol. And so, yeah, cortisol can cause noise sensitivity, overstimulation. Basically, it's your whole parasympathetic nervous system is just out of whack. And cortisol is a stuff of stress. Now, we need cortisol. It functions our body. We need our adrenals. We need all that stuff. But it's there to protect us during times of, like, imminent danger and stress. And a healthy body would be like, okay, now we can lower our cortisol. When I finally took a cortisol test to see if that's what was causing my tinnitus, I was in stage 3 HPA axis burnout, meaning I actually had, now hear me out here, it's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself. I actually had no cortisol in my body during the day, like dangerously low, which could have made an adrenal crisis happen. But then at night, when it's supposed to be low, my cortisol was so high that, like, the levels could have given me a heart attack. It was fucking crazy. It's a flip cycle, basically. I suggest getting a spit cortisol test online. I don't suggest getting the doctor to test your cortisol, because all they'll do is send you to a lab in the morning to take one single blood draw. And it's not accurate for a lot of reasons. For one, your body has a rhythm with cortisol. It rises, it stabilizes, it lowers. You need to see what it's doing at all times of the day, and the doctors won't test for that. For two, if you go to a lab early in the morning and somebody fucking sticks you with a needle, you're not very calm. So your levels aren't really all that accurate. So I ordered an online cortisol test. You just spit in a tube a bunch of times throughout a day at specific times. You like time it out, spit in it. Do it in a day where you don't have a lot going on. You don't want to give it a false reading where it's like a super stressed day. You just want to be like a baseline of what's going on. It took me about 6 months to resolve it, which is crazy because they told me that I wouldn't. They're like, you're in stage 3 HPA axis. You're going to take years to resolve this. I'm like, well, I'm stubborn. So it can't take time, It won't happen instantly, but it's something to look into. Okay, so I think Everywell is a brand that's good. Let's Get Checked is another one. Just shop around to see which one's cheapest. They're usually in the $90 to $150 range, but honestly, these days, my fucking insurance cost me a stupid amount of money, and like it doesn't really do much for me even if I try to use it. Like, and then if I go to the doctor, I end up paying like hundreds of dollars anyways, and I'm like, so I might as well just spend the $90 on the test and like get actual answers and not have to argue with the fucking doctor. I mean, you can't do that with every test, but it's helpful. Let me scroll way down. I feel like I've all the people who first submitted. Here's another vid test. Okay, so let's see. Help for chronic shortness of breath, dizziness, and fatigue since the big C last year. So that sounds like your lungs need some care. You've probably got a lot of CO2 in your body, which you need, by the way. It's not just all oxygen, but like I would get a pulse meter and see what your O2 levels are doing. That's a thing the doctors stick on your finger. You can get them on Amazon for like 10-15 bucks. They're worth having on hand. So I would also look into drinking mullein infusion. Make sure you strain that well. I have a video on my YouTube channel, which if you're watching on YouTube, you can go find that there. But if you're watching here in real time as I'm answering you, the link in my bio will take you to my YouTube channel, and I'll show you how to make a mullein infusion, a mullein tincture. Now here's another one. I actually just learned about this one a year and a half ago or so, and it is tiger's milk mushroom. Now she's a harder one to find. I have found pill form on Amazon. My son, we got it in the beginning before they said it was here, but we definitely had it. We are actually in the area where it kind of first jumped to, because we have a huge casino here. I live on a reservation. We have a huge casino, and people fly from like China to this casino because it's a short fly and it's a big casino. So people were coming over, and I'm not like faulting anybody, but just humans spread disease that way, right, by traveling. So we got it pretty early. And then we had that year of the smoke. I don't know if any of you live on the West Coast and remember that, but it was bad. We couldn't see the sun for a while, and my son developed asthma, like couldn't breathe suddenly, and he's never been asthmatic. And we took him to a specialist. They're like, people just get asthma. I swear to God, it might as well have been the same old guy that told me that tinnitus is just a thing. And he's like, here's some steroid inhalers. I'm like, what? But it just started. Like, he just got it. Like, can we do something? No. Well, fuck you. In about 3 months of working with mullein infusion, mullein tincture, and the tiger's milk mushroom, doesn't have asthma anymore. And even funner fact, his girlfriend who lives here with us, he's almost 19, she's 20. They were younger when they met, but she's been here with us for a couple of years now. She has like born with asthma, and when she uses that the tiger's milk mushroom consistently, she barely uses her inhaler. She went from like using it like every day, and one time I had to take her to the hospital because she used it too much and it made her heart beat out of her chest, you know. But I took him to the doctor because I was just like, well, what else could be going on with his lungs? Like, do we need to like look and see if like it's from the smoke or this or that? But the doctor just didn't give a fuck. He's just like, here's an inhaler. I'm like, Jesus Christ, can you just like do a little bit of curiosity? Like, how boring is it to be a doctor if you don't even have like, are you not curious about what causes something? I know it's like you're an asthma doctor, but like, there's got to be differences between a person who's born with it and a person who develops it. There's got to be underlying causes. You just have no desire to like, I'm like, God damn, you must be bored, man. Anyhow, so definitely look into those. Let me scroll here. Somebody said, thank you, April, in advance. Do you have any ideas on dry, itchy, flaky elbow gunk that just won't go away? Our skin is the biggest organ on our body, and it's a pretty good indicator that like if something's wrong with our skin, something's wrong inside of our body, right? So topically you could use things like tallow, any kind of a cream with it that has tallow. I would avoid things with essential oils because it'll dry your skin out more. You know those pumice stones that you use like on your feet after you've taken a bath? I would probably do that just to get that dead skin off of there, but don't make yourself bleed. Be gentle about it, you know. But then I would start working on supporting your liver. Anybody who's got psoriasis, eczema, again, you can use like topical stuff, like anything with a tallow balm or a comfrey balm or something like that that's going to like help like stimulate skin cell production. But it's something happening with your liver. It's something that your liver isn't happy with. And people are like, what? I'm like, yeah. Like, most of the time, if you've got skin issues going on, your liver isn't happy. And if you start doing, like, the milk thistle in particular over burdock, probably, you would probably see an improvement in a handful of months. because you start stimulating liver production and liver health and making your liver happier. It can reduce toxins out of your body more efficiently, and then you don't have skin issues. Yeah, I'm at the 2-hour mark. 200 people watching, 2 hours in. I'm like losing my voice, and I have to do this again tomorrow, by the way. So if you didn't know, I swear to God, I accidentally set up the subscriber thing on Instagram. I was like, oh, what's this? You know, I was going to look into it and think about setting it up, but apparently when I agreed, it just activated it, and then I didn't look at my phone for like 2 hours, and before I knew it, I had like 80 subscribers. And I was like, okay, so we're doing this. Oh, I don't wonder if the doctors get a cut from Big Pharma. Doctors get commission from prescribing medication. Plain and simple. I know it's the movies, but have you ever seen the movies where like the pharmaceutical rep comes and like shows the stuff to the doctor, and the doctor ever give you samples before? Here, I have a sample, try this. That's because pharma reps come and sell them something, and the doctors get a cut. That's how that works. So I'm doing this again tomorrow for my subscribers. These people pay me $4.99 a month, and Instagram gives me like $2.75 of it. I'm gonna be honest, maybe like $3.50. But I basically, like, if you're a subscriber, tomorrow you'll be able to tune in, and I'll more likely be able to answer your question, because I don't have like, there's probably like 400 questions in my Q&A thing right now. So I just like, I'm totally lost. I look at the comment section. That's what my magpie brain does. So if you want to subscribe to that, you can get access to the Q&A tomorrow, and you'll have more of a likelihood of me answering your question if I didn't answer your question. However, please know that when I'm done with that video, just like with this video, I will be uploading it publicly. That way nobody, like, if you can't afford to pay, you still get the knowledge and the answers that I give to people. That's really important to me. It was hard for me to figure out a way that I like didn't hold knowledge hostage for profit. So I do once a month, maybe twice a month, depending on how I'm feeling. I will do this free live Q&A where I talk for like 2 hours and answer questions, and then I'll do a subscriber one for subscribers only, and I'll answer all their questions, but then I will upload that video for people to watch for free. So you still have that information. What time is it tomorrow? I will probably do it at like, I might do it a little bit earlier. I felt like I was waiting around for this one to happen. I'm like, I'm done. I'm just waiting an hour. So I think I might do it tomorrow at 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And so that's what I'm thinking. And you, if you are a subscriber, you will see the question box when I'm done here. That way you have time to submit. And then if you want to subscribe, I think you go to my bio and there's a subscribe button. I can feel my brain slowing down, even though it might not seem like it. You can subscribe, and it just like subscribes to my Instagram, and they do this thing where I can show you like special subscriber stories or posts or videos and things like that. And I'm trying pretty hard not to make it to where like there's special content that only subscribers get, because I don't want to shut anybody out like behind a wall. It's more so like you're paying a handful of bucks for me to be more likely to answer your question through a Q&A, but then everybody gets to see it. So I think I'm gonna be done. If I didn't answer your question, don't be bummed out. I feel like I didn't answer more than like 50 questions out of the hundreds that I got, because I go in probably too much depth. But I also kind of feel like I go into so much depth for one question that I inevitably end up covering different topics that somebody asked. So there might have been a bunch of information in there. But if you haven't, I have a ton of these saved. I have a lot of Q&As saved in my bio that might not be videos, but like I'm answering questions in a story. So I also have some videos uploaded of this. I think one other that I had uploaded, but yeah, there'll be more. And if I'm doing them monthly, you'll have time again. And if you really want to make sure that I'm answering your question, you can join my subscription thing through Instagram, which they let you cancel whenever. But yeah, okay, I think I gotta go. I think I'm gonna go take care of myself. I talked for about 2 hours instead of an hour and a half. I knew that would happen. My timer didn't work. I think it died. I need new batteries. So, thank you. thank you so much for watching. Thank you to those who bought the little badge things. Thank you for all of your support. And remember that you are literally smart enough to do all of this too. You really are. I genuinely believe that. From the center of my heart to you. I love when I make a smooth ending. Alright, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.